Here it is, Doctor Who Series 1 to 4 video essays all in one big bumper video. It's been funny putting this together because like the RTD era, these videos are a lot less polished and shiny as my newer ones and yet have a rustic, budgetless charm to them. So grab a cup of tea, or the whole kettle, the video is long, and snuggle up for the ramblings of a writer talking about a show he'll never grow out of. I hope you like it, and if not, I'm sure you'll let me know in the comments. This is Doctor Who, the first RTD era.
Starting off, I honestly can't imagine the stress the entire creative team must have been under while making this series. I mean, sleepless nights doesn't cut it, they must have been bricking it. It's no overstatement to say that people expected Doctor Who to fail, and by people, I mean the media, the papers, the tabloids. They were expecting this to flop, and fans probably were too. Doctor Who had been off the telly for years at this point, and let's be honest, it's easy to get this show wrong. Then they announced that the new companion was going to be played by pop star Billie Piper, which would have felt like a wild choice. Christopher Eccleston was a completely different vibe for the Doctor that had come before. It was being led by the guy that wrote Queer as Folk, a fantastic writer, but not someone you immediately think of for BBC Tea Time Adventures. It very easily could have died on its arse. And yet, it's probably one of the greatest seasons of the show. Definitely one of the most consistent. But why? Why did Series 1, a series where they were really finding their feet, work so well? One of the main reasons, I think, is because it understood what it needed to be. There was no worrying about the evil mouse, it wasn't interested in trending on TikTok or creating viral moments. Its main priority was to capture the imaginations of families on a Saturday night. Instead of trying to compete with Star Wars or Marvel, it had to compete with Ant and Dec. The legacy, the importance of the franchise or the IP wasn't the driving factor. It just had to be good. It had to live in the moment. They had no idea if it would be picked up for a second season, let alone 15 seasons with specials and spin-offs and awful video games. And don't start commenting that actually this game is good. No, it's not. You're lying to yourself. And it didn't rely on the past. Yes, the show had ran for years before, it had an identity and a rich lore, but they knew that wouldn't work. It had to be new and exciting for people who had never heard of the show, for a new generation. It had to be the ultimate jumping on point. No one is interested in being told something's good or iconic, it had to earn that status again. And because of all those factors, I think it's probably the best jumping on point the show has ever produced. We've had a few attempts through recent years of starting again. We've heard showrunners or the cast talk about introducing it to new fans or a new jumping on point, but the issue is it's never been treated as such again in the same way. And I think that's because it's never been as exciting for the creative team as 2005 was. I know I said it must have been stressful, but God, it must have been fun. Imagine the pure joy of knowing you're bringing your favourite show back. You get to write the TARDIS introduction for the first time in years, and the majority of your audience aren't going to know what to expect. Kids at home will be saying the iconic line along with the character. It's bigger on the inside. You don't have to worry about reinventing this scene or making the TARDIS even bigger to shock people. The joy and the whimsy is enough. And Series 1 relishes in these moments. It treats them like new and exciting ideas rather than just a blueprint or a checklist of the show. It's bigger on the inside is not just a cliche or a trope, it's a revelation. And speaking of tropes, the Doctor is a character that I think is very easy to get wrong, and if not wrong, definitely a bit off. Because as a character, the Doctor fits in many different archetypes. They're the hero, the one that swoops in and saves the day. They're also the crazy scientist that speaks lots of technobabble that most of the other characters don't understand. They're also the quirky one, the person that says random things. They're sometimes the comic relief, other times they're dark and mysterious, and as the actor and the writers change, the vibe of the character changes too. And that's a good thing, it allows the show to adapt and feel fresh. However, it also means it's very easy to slip into tropes or very basic traits, and actually some of my least favourite episodes of the show do this. In Closing Time, the Doctor is just wacky with a capital W, and I find him insufferable. And these cliches, they stick into public consciousness, definitely for casual fans who may dip in and out of the show. So when Doctor Who was coming back, people already had an idea of how this character would be portrayed. One paper started the rumour that it was going to be Paul Daniels, the magician, the wacky magic man. And I get why people believe this. If you look at the classic series on a very basic level, it kind of makes sense. You have the Doctor with a long scarf, the vegetable-wearing Doctor, the Doctor that skinned the Teletubbies and wore them for his own pleasure, the question mark Doctor. Yes, the writing and the performances are much richer than that, but those are the things people remember. So the one thing no one was expecting was a PTSD leather jacket Doctor, a darker, more grounded, wounded adventurer. Still whimsical, still alien, but quieter, brooding, and most importantly, real. Everything he does is attached to his arc, his grief and his loneliness. He's not wacky, he's just not human. And he's not quirky, he's just genuinely funny. He's the hero in our story without being a superhero. There's no prophecies that define him, no baggage of past performances or stories. He's just the next incarnation of this character, but the first version most viewers will meet. And his arc of being the last of the Time Lords doesn't feel like just a storyline tacked on, but instead is embedded deeply into the writing and performance of the character. So much so that I know a lot of new viewers thought he had always been the last of the Time Lords and got a shock when they watched some classic episodes and saw these curtain-wearing poshos. His loss and pain is treated as seriously as it would be in a standard adult drama. The monsters and the campiness are there too, of course, that's what makes the show so good, but both parts complement the other rather than clashing. And this is why the character of Rose works so well too. She and the Doctor complement each other. Their relationship is the crux of the whole series. Right, there are some fantastic companions in the classic era, so don't get me wrong when I'm saying this. However, there's also a lot of blueprint characters who are there because the show just needs them to be. Their backgrounds and lives before the Doctor are rarely explored, and some of them are merely there to ask questions and scream. However, the companion really is the audience surrogate. We witness these wonders and thrills of the universe through their eyes. We relate to their joy, their shock and fear. And, as this was a new era, introducing the core elements to a whole new generation, this role had never been so important. And that's why Rose works so well in this series. She's relatable without being bland. She is so full of character and flaws, actual flaws, characters with flaws. Why don't we have characters with flaws anymore? We understand her wants, her aspirations, the feeling of being young and drifting through life. Her family and her boyfriend again are flawed but real. They feel like people who you'd see on a normal London council estate. And even the estate feels like a character in itself. It feels real. It's not overplayed or made ridiculously rough for dramatic effect like a lot of dramas do. It's just a normal London estate where normal families live. And this world, the relationship to the Powell estate, is why so many people feel connected to these characters. We talk a lot about someone's first Doctor, but for many, Rose and her family were their first companions. And this normality of family, of eating chips and watching telly, blended so well with the whimsy of the show that it created its own sort of identity. This wasn't a heavy sci-fi show like Star Trek, but it wasn't a usual BBC kitchen sink drama either. It was a blend of both, something for the whole family. And the Tylers, they didn't need a mystery or world-shattering event to feel important. It was their family dynamic. The very real difficulties of a young adult wanting more from life while her mum's just happy how she is. A loss in the family where grief has kind of gone unspoken for years. It feels so raw that many viewers can identify with that feeling. We felt for Rose, for Jackie, for Mickey sometimes, and we understand their perspectives. So when a strange time-travelling alien crashed into their lives, it didn't feel like these characters only existed for the Doctor. Instead, the Doctor was just a continuation of everything they've already lived through. But my favourite thing about Rose, a trait that they give her that so many franchises now refuse to do, is she's a little bit of an arsehole. I spoke about this a little bit in my Jurassic Park video, please go check that out, the views have been dire. But a lot of franchises now seem afraid to make a character we're meant to like anything but perfect. And even when they mess up massively, it's treated like either a joke or a completely understandable accident. We're never meant to hold it against them. And I've seen this in so many franchises lately and I can't stand it because it's boring. I want characters to be messy, to say the wrong things, to make the wrong choices. And unlike a certain scene in the later series, I want it to have consequences. I want the character to regret or to change or to be told off or lose. I want characters to lose. And Rose constantly does all of these things. The way she treats Mickey throughout the series is at times a hard watch, but it's perfectly character-driven moments. Rose is young, a little naive, bored, and suddenly this man drops out of the sky and shows her the universe and it changes her. She becomes selfish and daring and a little reckless, both with her actions and words. She constantly flips between not wanting anything to do with Mickey to wanting his full attention, because she's young, and young people who are going through massive changes in life can be cruel. But of course, it's always nice to know someone finds you attractive, so she keeps him there. She wants to be wanted. But her actions have consequences. He starts seeing someone else and she doesn't like it. She challenges him, calls him out for his behaviour without ever stopping to think about hers. So he tells her. He breaks down and has a go at her, and she finally sees how her actions have affected the ones around her. And then she still chooses the Doctor. That is just great character writing through and through. It allows an audience to form their own opinions on the character and doesn't worry about some people judging or disliking her. But good characters are nothing without a good story. So what are they like? The first 5 episodes feel like the show is just having fun, showing off everything that Doctor Who can and would eventually be. From shop dummies crashing through London to a VIP alien party in the stars, the show never held back. It introduced its main appeal within the first 3 episodes, travelling far in the future in episode 2 and then travelling back in time in episode 3. And it's in this first half of the season that we really see everything that the RTD era was going to be. Fun and campy, spooky at times, with a heavy focus on Earth-based stories, where the audience will come back each week for the characters rather than a heavily detailed story arc. Also, there was no mistaking that this was a British show. I don't see people talking about this much, but the iconography in the first series is excellent. From the London Eye to the Slovene ship crashing into Big Ben in the Thames, London was very much used like Hollywood uses American landmarks in their blockbusters. And this was incredibly exciting. It seems a bit silly to say now, but back in 2005, there wasn't anything like this on telly, let alone BBC One tea time viewing. But there's one episode that I think cemented this series and the era as a whole as not only the perfect jumping on point, but also a blueprint of how to bring back classic elements of the show. Also, really quickly, I'm currently recording this video in 30 degrees heat with all the windows closed and the fans off so you can hear me. So if you're liking this video, please give it a like, because if you don't, you will forever be an arsehole. So fucking hot. Dalek is still seen as one of the greatest Dalek episodes we've ever gotten in the show, and it's easy to see why. It's simple in premise, but executed marvellously. It's a base under siege full of tension and horror while still keeping character at its core. Because what Dalek doesn't do is just tell the audience that we should fear the Daleks. It doesn't expect you to care that they're iconic monsters from the past. Of course, old fans will get a thrill from seeing one of these killing machines on screen again, but the episode never falls into treating itself as a gimmick. The Daleks are not just the Doctor's greatest foe because they've always been. Instead, they're recontextualized for the modern era with the introduction of the Time War. The Time War is a reason we should fear the Daleks now. It's a reason why our lead character fears them now, and it allows both old fans and new fans to be reintroduced to these iconic monsters. The audience goes on this journey together. Yes, there's a few little Easter eggs throughout the episode. The Cyberman head is a lovely little nod to the past, but it never treats the new fans as stupid. It never leaves those who've never seen the show before lost in the dark or confused with multiple callbacks that don't really mean anything. The Time War builds on the Daleks' legacy while creating a whole new one, and the decision to only have one Dalek in the whole episode is probably why this story stands out so much above the others. We aren't just told that the Daleks are deadly, we witness it time and time again as this one bronze soldier kills every extra in sight. We're not just told the Doctor is scared, we see it. 9 acts in a way we haven't seen before, and honestly in a way we never kind of see again. His anger, pain and fear is evident throughout the whole story. It's not treated like an afterthought, but instead the driving force behind the whole episode. For example, if we take this moment from Empire of Death, 15th Doctor's first final featuring the return of classic villain Sutekh, we very quickly realise why Dalek works and Empire doesn't. In Empire, we are treated to what feels like an incredibly long scene of the Doctor watching a previous adventure on BBC iPlayer while telling his new friend why he finds it so scary. It's basically the Doctor reacting to Doctor Who. And the episode comes to an entire halt in this moment and the stakes are non-existent, even though moments before we just saw the whole universe turn to dust. It doesn't carry over into this scene. Instead, it pauses while we have a little moment to tell us why we should care while catching new viewers up on the show's lore and classic era. Instead, Dalek does this, and ends like this. The Doctor's fear changes him and suddenly the viewer and Rose see him in a whole different light. The Time War isn't just a fun plot thread that is dangled in the air. It has consequences that affect this whole story, both in terms of plot and character. We don't fear and care about the Daleks because of what's come before, we're invested in them now because of what's happening in the moment. We don't need to be told to care because it's impossible not to. The Doctor is a man who lost his entire race, his entire planet to these killing machines and is now suddenly faced with them again after thinking he wiped them all out. It's drama at its most compelling and I love it. And while the Time War is a storyline that will span for multiple years and eras, Series 1 also has another arc that pops up nearly every episode. Bad Wolf. 2 words that pop up every episode leading to the final. A nice little plot device that will go on to be used again and again and again and again. Sometimes it's phrases, sometimes it's old women, and sometimes it's bumblebees. Doctor Who loves this device, is addicted to it, and it means to go to rehab. And usually when a show tries to do the same or similar thing again and again and again and again, is because it didn't work the first time and they've thought of a way to improve it. However, Bad Wolf is probably the best it's ever been used. Because the Bad Wolf technique of a story arc isn't complicated. There's nothing to get wrong, really. It's just 2 words that pop up a lot. It's a fun story device, that's it. It's a nice little thing to look out for when watching for the first time. And when I watched the series with my partner's cousin recently, he got so excited when he realised the 2 words kept popping up and it was really fun to see. So it's nice. Is it groundbreaking? No, but it works. And the resolution of this arc really works for me. Yes, it's a bit of an ex machina and yes, this era loves them, but here it works. It's rooted in character like most of the series, so it doesn't stand out to me like others do. We'll get to this one another day. If anything, the better connecting arc throughout the series is how little moments and story beats all come together at the end. The Daleks return, this time with an army, the ending of Boomtown links to the resolution of Bad Wolf, Rose meeting her dad on Father's Day is the reason Jackie helps her in parting of the ways, the final taking place on Satellite 5 like the long game. Okay, let's talk about the long game. I've been putting off talking about the long game. I don't want to talk about the long game, but I'm going to talk about the long game. The episode isn't bad. I don't hate it. It's alright. It's fine. It's meh.
It's moo.
Honestly, its worst crime is that it's boring. Like, the writing is good, all the concepts are strong, but it just drags. It feels slow in a way that no other story in this series does, and it sets up the final perfectly. The payoff in episode 12 is great, but I just wish this episode was more fun, or darker, or something. Adam is quite a boring character, the side characters don't really grab my attention at all, Simon Pegg is good but kinda wasted, the Jagrafess is fun but he is just a ceiling with teeth, it's fine. Honestly, if this episode is one of your favourites, please comment and tell me why, because I don't get it. Like, I get the episode, I just don't get people who love the episode, so I'd like to know why you do, if you do. But that's kind of the only low point for me. Yes, the Slovene fart, but that's fine. They're farting, snivelling politicians. Honestly, they should have gone further. Have them shit. Boomtown is fun, it's Doctor Who doing the sitcom genre, and it works better than a lot of other attempts. Just you wait until I have to talk about closing time. This is the second time I mentioned it in this video. I bloody hate closing time. If you've watched any of my Doctor Who videos, you will know I love me a monster. So in each of these videos, we'll be looking at the monsters of the series and to see how they're used and if it gets a pass or a fail from me. And I'm not going to drag this out. Series 1 passes on the monster front. I mean, just look at it. It's crammed full of amazing aliens and monsters. It also just has a lot of little ideas sprinkled about. The robot spiders, the space pig, the controller. This freaked me out as a kid. I found it so unsettling and I still do today. It's horrible. All these monsters were so well crafted and written that it's no surprise that action figures were made immediately. The monsters were on the front page of the magazines, of the posters, kids were playing them in the playground. It was so brilliantly done, all of them with catchphrases and scary moments, and they just hit the nail on the head first time. I don't understand why so many following seasons have failed at this front when the first one does it perfectly. And it's why Series 1 is basically a perfect season of television. It's exciting, fresh, and for an era that is still finding its feet, it sticks the landing almost immediately, and the whole thing is capped off with the perfect farewell. Now, I love the Ninth Doctor. I think he's such a wonderful version of the character, and although I understand why people say they wish they had another series with him, in a story sense, I'm kinda glad we didn't. I think having the Doctor regenerate in this series is the perfect way of cementing the show's main staples. You leave this season knowing everything you need to. There's adventures, there's aliens, and there's many goodbyes. And the Ninth Doctor's arc ends perfectly here. He's a man that needed to change, a man that needed to learn to laugh and dance and feel hopeful again. And with the help of Rose, by the end he does. She saved him. So it's poetic that in the end, the last thing he does is save her. And I love his regeneration scene. There's no massive speech or grand gesture, the TARDIS doesn't blow up, it's just very simple, but that doesn't mean it's boring. It's just subtle. And as this would be most viewers' first regeneration, I think it's perfect. It's like the show is holding the audience's hand and guiding them through it. As Rose learns, we learn. As Rose says goodbye, so do we. Series 1 is everything that I love about the Russell T Davies era. It has campiness, spooks, and a lot of heart. It's perfect for all the family, offering something for everyone at a tea time slot. There's a few little hiccups along the way, but nothing offensively bad. It's kind of amazing with how troubled the actual shoot and behind the scenes was that this series is so strong. A series of one of the greatest stories and one of the worst of all time. I think Series 2 of Doctor Who is a really interesting series to talk about, which is good, because I'm going to talk about it. After the mega hit that was Series 1, this series definitely could have fallen into that difficult second album trope. It had a new lead actor to introduce, which is always a difficult job for any show, and this series really had to be the one that would cement Doctor Who's place on the TV schedules. It had to prove Series 1 wasn't just luck, but instead the beginning of something huge. And although I think one word for this series is messy, it's definitely not as consistent as Series 1, I do think it has some really strong merits. So we're going to dive into it all. The highs, the lows, I'm coming for you Gatus, and the way it begins to build a world and a brand, and why casual viewers may have a stronger connection to this series than major fans of the show. This is Doctor Who Series 2, the messy second album. I want to take you back to Christmas Day 2005. You've just been given a Nintendo DS and you're feeling like a fucking legend. You're full of turkey, your dad's a little drunk, your nan's fallen asleep or died, depending on how much sherry she's had, and you're about to tune in to the Doctor Who Christmas special. God, I'm feeling a bit nostalgic. One of the weirdest things about looking back at this episode is that I remember everyone I was with on Christmas Day being excited to watch it. Now it feels like Doctor Who Christmas specials are just anxiety-inducing events where you hope it's good and that the family don't hate you for forcing them to sit in silence for an hour while they slowly die of boredom or embarrassment. I think The Christmas Invasion is a great Christmas special, and I'll get onto why in a minute. But first, I think it's easy to forget just how much was riding on this episode. It had to introduce the 10th Doctor, which was most of the viewers' first time having to adjust to a new actor in the role, but it also had to prove that it deserved this Christmas Day slot. In the UK, Christmas Day has always been appointment telly. It's kind of shifted in recent years, which I think is a massive shame, but back in the early 2000s, Christmas Day was the big one. And this episode brought in a peak of 9.8 million viewers, the second highest rating of the evening. A major success and a kind of a huge sign that Doctor Who was here to stay. The BBC had a winner on their hands. As for the episode itself, I think it's really strong. It's fun, campy, but sinister at the same time. I mean, all the people standing on the edge of the buildings is really dark. I kind of wonder if they'd be brave enough to do this now. It's this kind of edginess, if you can excuse the pun, that I miss. It's not a visual you imagine for family tea time viewing, let alone on the most magical day of the year. This episode knows exactly what it needs to be, mixing typical Christmas stuff with that Doctor Who whimsy. I love the killer Santas, the killer Christmas tree, I adore Jackie in this episode. None of it's particularly groundbreaking or subtle, but sod it, it's Christmas. I think Doctor Who always needs to balance itself carefully with seriousness and silliness. Too serious and it becomes bloated, too silly and it becomes space babies. But Christmas Invasion gets the balance perfectly for me. However, most importantly, this episode guides the viewer through change. Once again, Rose is our eyes. The Doctor she and we grew to love is no more, and suddenly this new man is wearing his clothes. She doesn't know if she can trust him, let alone call him the Doctor. And over the hour, he grows on her, and we realise that this is the same show, the same character, and the same hero. The only thing I don't like about this episode is the way David Tennant says this line.
It's a fighting hand.
I don't know why, but it just kills me. I hate it.
It's a fighting hand.
Why does he say it like that? Why do I despise it so much? Is it me? Is it me? Does this hurt anyone else?
It's a fighting hand.
Speaking of Tennant, fighting hand aside, I think Tennant is magical in this role, and the fun he's having just radiates off the screen. I know fans get annoyed with the amount of attention the 10th Doctor gets over other incarnations, but I think that's just part of the show. Sometimes things work for a larger audience, and people just latched onto this era in a way that I don't even think the creative team were expecting. I'll talk more about the 10th Doctor in future series videos because I don't think this is his best season, but I do like where they take this character. I quite enjoy just how human this Doctor can be, and it's evident from the first episode where he actually has Christmas dinner with the Tylers, something Nine never would have done. There's still a darkness and an anger to his character, but it's just different. Nine may shout or argue or be very cutting with his words, while the 10th Doctor's anger is more evident in his actions. He lets his emotions get the better of him, he's very quick to react and incredibly impulsive, and all of this is shown in his very first episode. I think the Christmas Invasion characterises the Doctor almost immediately, something that some other eras have struggled to do. And a lot of this comes from Tennant's performance. He's an incredibly charismatic actor with an energy that just takes over the screen. Your eyes just get drawn to him. He's so effortlessly watchable and charming that it makes sense why so many people fell in love with his character. Definitely children. I think part of the reason this era did so well with the kids demographic has a lot to do with David Tennant's presence on screen. He's very quick, very animated, both in his physicality and speech, that it holds a kid's attention span. Throw in a couple of great monsters and you've got the young ones hooked. Now, one of the main criticisms people have with the 10th Doctor is his romantic traits. It's no overstatement to say that Ten was pretty horny, falling in love and lust with a lot of the characters over his tenure, and I can understand why people don't like this. If you adore the character's more alien characteristics, then this may feel too big of a change for you, and I get that. Personally, I don't have a massive issue with it, definitely not in this series. I think a romantic and flirty Doctor was always going to happen at some point, and I think Tennant was the right performer to give this side of the character. I think they use it too much, definitely in later seasons, but him and Rose works. The chemistry between David and Billie Piper is magical. I think the reason it may feel tiring to fans is because of how many times after this it's happened. What with the Doctor and Rory being pitted against each other, River, Clara, Yaz, I feel like we've squeezed every bit of story of the Doctor and companion having feelings for each other, and it just needs a long rest. It almost began to feel like a gimmick, a trope of the show, where at least for me, it feels natural in series 2. And it's the show treading new ground, which I'm always a fan of. The first few episodes of Series 2 are fine. New Earth is incredibly camp, but it's a fun romp. It's not a groundbreaking series opener, but I'd argue that's not a bad thing. It's got a lot of monsters and action, and honestly, that's what a lot of Doctor Who is missing now. Say what you want about New Earth, but I can see why as a kid I loved it, and why so many children watched the show at the time. Evil cat nurses, zombies, talking skin, it's nuts, but that's Doctor Who. Same with Tooth and Claw, it promises a werewolf and delivers on that promise. I don't know why there's kung fu monks, but sod it, why not? And this episode is darker than people give it credit for. The Cage Man is terrifying. Honestly, one of the scariest scenes of this era. And although these episodes may not be award-winning drama, they're perfect for the audience that they gained. They fit the feel of this era both in style and a storytelling sense, so the audience feels safe in its company. The style and tone of a show really does play into audiences' expectations and enjoyment. Heaven Sent is a beloved episode, but if it was in this era, it would have been incredibly divisive because it would feel out of place. It's one of the biggest issues with the current seasons. It doesn't feel right. Space Babies doesn't feel like the same show as 73 Yards. But I think these early Series 2 episodes all tonally fit. This creepy cage man is a lot scarier and darker than Chip and Joan Rivers, but it still feels like the same show, the same creative world that we're exploring. And these episodes do a wonderful job at developing Ten and Rose's dynamic. They're both young, or at least they look young, so it has this young naivety to it. They're a little reckless, very jokey. They're running across the universe and finding everything joyous, barely stopping to recognise the danger they're in. And as this series ends in a devastating way, I think it's important we get these light-hearted fun adventures. It's the balance that makes those moments more effective. One day you're having a romp getting separated by a monk, next day you're separated by a wall.
Hey, that's life.
School Reunion, however, has a bit more to talk about. Although Series 1 reintroduced some of the biggest elements of the classic show, mainly with the Daleks, it was done in a very clever way of recontextualising them for the modern audience. As I said before in my latest video, instead of just telling us the Daleks are his greatest foe, be scared of them, they created the Time War, giving new viewers a reason to fear them and a new reason for the Doctor to hate them. Everything else was introduced as core elements that needed little explaining, such as the TARDIS or regeneration. That's just part of the structure of Doctor Who. School Reunion, however, is the first time the show really acknowledges its past, in an episode that, while I still love, I do think it has some of the era's biggest issues. But first, the positives. The way Sarah Jane is reintroduced into the Whoniverse is masterfully done. Sarah Jane Smith is one of, if not the most popular companion of the classic era, travelling with both the third and fourth Doctor. Her bravery, humour and moral compass made her one of the greats, and fans adored her. Bringing her back could have easily been a massive mistake if handled wrong. This was the first time Classic Who and classic fans were really being acknowledged, so if it had been shit, it would have felt like a massive betrayal for those who've been fans of the show for such a long time. But Toby Whithouse, along with Elizabeth Sladen's performance, managed to not just please classic viewers, but also find new fans for the character in 2006. This is because her appearance isn't just treated like a stunt like it might be nowadays. This wasn't a little wink to the camera. Instead, her presence had a massive effect on the plot and the tone of the story. The resolution entirely revolves around her being here, what with her pet dog being blown up, but also all the character work. Her presence really reminds the audience that the Doctor is old, has had a past life that we haven't seen in this new era. It makes him feel more alien, and it's the first time Rose really looks at him this way in the series. It allows us to see our lead in a new light, a man who's so happy to see his old friend, who is almost overwhelmed with nostalgia and yet still has no regrets about leaving. No apologies are made. It also allows us to see a new side of Rose. I know people find her quite annoying in this story, but I think it fits for what we've seen before. She's young, naive, scared of being left behind. The Doctor made her feel important and suddenly she feels ordinary, something she's been so scared of being since travelling in the TARDIS. And for me, this is how you do a returning character. You make it matter not just for those watching at home, but for the actual story that's being told. So I should be saying this episode's perfect, but there's one thing that really holds it back for me on every rewatch. The unnecessary romance. Now, I know I said I don't mind Rose in this story because I think her arsehole behaviour fits for such a young character. However, it annoys me so much that Sarah Jane is at times written like a jilted lover rather than the hurting friend who was let down by someone they care about. When the subtle pain is allowed to shine, it creates some amazing TV. This scene is wonderful in terms of writing and performance. I love it. But I wish it was like this throughout the whole story. I don't think the sudden introduction that Sarah Jane was once head over heels in love with the Doctor is necessary to the plot of the episode or to the character. If anything, it's less interesting. Have Rose still be jealous and allow that jealousy to be out of fear of one day being abandoned, that's fine. But Sarah Jane shouldn't be jealous of Rose. She instead should be longing for days gone by. She should be upset that the Doctor never mentioned her because that's her friend, who she spent some of the best times of her life with. I think the jilted lover angle takes away from the more interesting, emotional story that could be told. Also, this bit always annoys me. In series 1, her treatment of Mickey, although mean, felt natural, it was believable, but this eye roll is stupid. I don't know, it just feels forced and out of character, and I don't... Speaking of Rose... God, remember the days when Doctor Who had great character-driven storylines? This series may have its critics, but God, the character work is lovely. Definitely how it builds on what was previously explored in Series 1. The Tylers and Mickey are some of the greatest side characters we've had in the show. They're not just stock characters that are there for reactions, but they feel so real. They have wants and needs and secrets and sadness. And the way they grow and change over the course of these two series just feels effortless. It's not, there's a hell of a lot of work put in it, but a well-written story masks that. It allows an audience to feel safe in its company. In Series 1, we explored Jackie and Pete's relationship and the brilliantly written Father's Day. In 45 minutes, we witness a crumbling marriage, a man who is kind of a bit of a wet wipe become the father that time never allowed him to be. We witness Rose explore the grief that's gone unspoken in her life, and this isn't just grief of a 19-year-old, it's the grief of a child who's finally allowing herself to feel sad and angry and scared. It's perfect, and this story could have ended here and it would have been a lovely addition to the Tyler's arc. However, the show goes one further, diving deeper into these themes of love and loss while moving towards a conclusion that doesn't just feel natural, but incredibly earned. The Cybermen two-parter is incredibly underrated. Obviously, Dalek gets the praise it deserves for bringing back such a classic villain, but Rise of the Cybermen and the Age of Steel do a marvellous job too, keeping many aspects what made them iconic in the first place, while also modernising them to keep with the new era's tone. Are they a bit stompy? Yeah, but that noise getting closer and closer to the house at the end of part 1 is just a brilliant bit of tea time horror, and I love it. Also, making these Cybermen from the parallel world allows you to make changes that won't necessarily rile up die-hard fans, which I think is just a very clever thing to do. However, for me, the genius of these episodes is due to the emotional storylines our characters go through while going up against villains that wish to erase all emotion and feeling. Rose's pain in seeing her dad being alive and successful in this parallel world is really brilliantly done. She's longing for this father figure she never had, and although she knows he isn't really her dad, she's desperate for him to be. Her having to see her parents' marriage still struggling, her not being alive in the world, it's all raw emotion that is given its time to breathe. This story is just incredibly well paced. Mickey getting to see his nan again, Pete losing Jackie, even the Doctor thinking the TARDIS has died, it's all allowed its moment. And no one ever acts out a character for the convenience of plot. They all still feel grounded in what we've previously been told. Mickey staying behind isn't just a plot twist to get people talking, it makes perfect sense. He knows Rose and him are done, she's picked the Doctor, so now he's doing something for him. Also, I love it when a plot feels naturally embedded into the entire series. This episode never makes you think that the parallel world will be important for the final. Instead, it feels like it's important for the character growth, which in my opinion is always the stronger story beat. Okay, enough praise. Let's talk about the crap stuff. Dear God, this is a bad episode. Me and a friend have this running joke that some episodes of Doctor Who are just evil. Episodes where the theme or the story or overall vibe is so backwards, so wrong, that the episode should come with a warning. The Idiot's Lantern is an evil episode. It's horrible, nasty little thing. And I'll talk about the messaging in a bit, we'll get to it. But why are there so many Dutch angles? It's all Dutch. Now I love a Dutch angle as much as the next guy, unless the next guy is Euros Lyn, because he's lost the plot here. There's so many of them. It's barely a Doctor Who episode at this point, but an immersion of what the world looks like during a stroke. It just hurts my eyes. And the messaging, dear God, it's so bad. We spend the episode with the Connollys, a family made up of Tommy the teenager, Rita his mum, and Eddie, his controlling, abusive, evil dad who is most definitely a violent man. We watch him terrify his wife and child, control their lives, threaten them with violence while also pretending that he's a great upstanding gentleman in the community. We see him shout, go bright red with anger, the works. He is an awful bloke. Anyway, 40 minutes and 5,000 Dutch angles later, Rita kicks him out and finally he loses. He lost his home and family and he deserves it. The episode could and should end here. It still wouldn't make it a good episode, but at least it would have some morals. But then, in which may be one of the weirdest endings of the show, Rose tells Tommy, the boy who has lived in fear of his dad his whole life, to go after him, to be pally, to ignore all the years of abuse and terror because he's still your dad at the end of the day. And this is bad enough until she follows it up by suggesting that he, the victim, can save his abusive dad. So we see them walking off chatting and it's meant to be a happy ending. That's insane. You're insane, Gatiss. That's just a dreadful message for a family show. It's a dreadful message for a show in general, but let alone when you know people are watching it with their family. What doesn't help is there isn't much else going for the episode. I quite like The Wire, but that's only because of Maureen Lipman's camp performance. The faceless people are quite a good visual, but that's kind of it. It's not gripping in any way. It's not fun enough to be entertaining, nor is it creepy or scary. It's not trying to say anything interesting about abusive parents other than forgive them, I guess. And maybe I'm reading it wrong, but I don't know how else you can read it. It's so odd. It's even weirder when you realise that we have 2 abusive dad episodes in this season, literally only a few episodes apart. Now, Fear Her at least has its morals in the right place. It's still a weak episode, full of nonsense. Again, not very entertaining at all. You can tell this was the cheap, quick one, but at least it acknowledges how abuse can affect a child and a family. Also, we get this guy, who may be in the running of my favourite one-off character. I love him. I hope that Big Finish have, or will one day, give him a spin-off, because he deserves it. And it's in these moments that you can really see the weaknesses of the series. It's a quality drop that just didn't happen in Series 1, and it stands out so much when paired with episodes such as the brilliant Ood two-parter. Also, I think it's interesting that the weakest episodes of the series barely have any interesting character work going for them, which really shows just how important the character was to this era. As soon as those emotional beats are removed, the whole episode feels lacking, with nothing really to latch onto. Also, we begin to see some laziness in the storytelling. Series 1 was never exactly subtle, but it never had anything as forced as the end of Fear Her. I think this may be one of the worst endings leading into a final, because it's just stupid. Like, what do you mean there's a storm coming? It feels so tacked on to try and leave the audience with some tension because it was missing throughout the episode. It does feel a little bit like the Doctor's saying, yeah, this one was a bit weak, but next time is a big one. Also, if we're talking about low points of the series, there's one other famous episode we've got to discuss, but I'm not going to slate it in a way you may be expecting. Doctor Who's Love and Monsters has become a legend within the fandom, with many claiming it to be the worst episode of all time. People don't just dislike this episode, they despise it, and it's constantly ranked as a low point of the entire show. Love and Monsters is the first Doctor-Light episode of the new era, focusing on a bunch of completely new characters with our main protagonist popping up at the beginning and the end for a couple of minutes. The episode features Elton, a man who once met the Doctor as a young boy, who joins a group called Linda, a small collective of people who meet up to share stories and theories of the mysterious man with a blue box. Over time, their interest begins to dwindle, and the group become more of a social club, with everyone bringing in food, reading their novels, and singing their little hearts out. Suddenly, they are interrupted by Victor Kennedy, Mr. Garlic Bread himself, who takes over the group and forces them to return to their efforts of tracking down the Doctor. And so far, so good. Like, in its execution it has problems, but as a story idea, I like it. I think it's fun to see how the Doctor's sudden appearance in people's lives can change them. Makes them slightly obsessive, but also brings them together in such a weird way. I also like the techniques used to tell this story. The flashbacks, the voiceover, talking to the camera. It's something different, and although it doesn't completely pay off, I like that it tried. I think the biggest issue early on is tonally it's all over the place. Sometimes it's incredibly slapstick, almost pantomime humour, while other times it's genuinely witty with its dialogue. And I'm not saying these two things can't work together, they just don't in this episode. It never comes together in a way that feels natural or pleasing. And this is probably the episode's biggest fault, it never completely gels. There's some lovely bits, some scenes that I think are brilliant character-driven moments, but that's always how it feels to me. Moments, segments, that never fit as a whole. And then when you throw in the Absorbaloff, okay, fuck it, let's talk about the Absorbaloff and his tiny little pants. For those of you who don't know, the Absorbaloff was created by a 9-year-old kid called William Grantham, who won the Blue Peter competition, Create a Doctor Who Monster. Now, Blue Peter seem to run a lot of these Make Something for Doctor Who competitions because they never seem to learn that kids are idiots. Okay, that's a joke. I think kids getting involved in the art and creativity is brilliant. However, I can promise you now that when I become a parent, I will not be sticking any shit drawings on my fridge. The fridge is a sacred place, and I will not be ruining it with little Molly's drawing of a lorry crushed cat. The design of the Absorbaloff is pretty faithful to the drawing, little pants included. And I'm gonna say it, I think the concept is quite good. A creature that absorbs people and their faces are forever a part of him, that's horrific. That's some proper weird body horror shit, and I'm here for it. I think that could have worked. Also, the kid's original idea was that the creature would be huge, as big as a double-decker bus. He must have been so disappointed. Way to crush your kid's dreams, Russell. But I like the idea, sorry. Like, can you just imagine? Like, can you just... Oh, I'll get through it. Hang on. Like, can you just imagine, like, telling your friends at school that you've won the competition, you've created a Doctor Who monster, and it's going to be the size of a double-decker bus, and then you tune in and it's Peter Kay doing this. That's fucking genius. But I like the idea. Doctor Who does the Blob. Amazing. Why not? Obviously they didn't do that, probably for budget reasons. This is another cheap episode after all. But it doesn't mean the idea couldn't have worked. And it still could have. Like, you know, Big Blob is better than Small Blob, but Small Blob is better than No Blob. But No Blob is better than Peter K. Blob. The issue can really be broken down into two parts. One, the casting of a well-known comedian immediately gives the impression that this is nothing more than a comedy villain. It can be done, comedians can be brilliant actors and play a variety of gritty roles, but that's never been what Peter Kay's known for. But then, they double down with how silly it all is. He's not threatening in any way, his dialogue is corny, the performance is so over the top it's almost parody. It doesn't match with the actual body horror aspects, it feels so messy. It feels like it's been created by a kid. And I think that's unfair to the initial idea that should have been taken, remodelled and reworked for a more overall family audience. I'm not saying that the Azorbalov needed to be necessarily scary, but it needs to match the screams and the horror that the characters are feeling, because otherwise it doesn't work. It can still be comedic, but it can't be pantomime, which I think this falls into occasionally. However, with all that being said, I think people are far too harsh on this episode, because although it has examples of some of the weakest elements of the era, it also has some examples of some of the strongest. The stuff with Jackie is lovely. It's really great to see the character away from Rose and the Doctor, to witness how this massive change in her life has affected her. There's a real sadness to Jackie in this episode, and it's written and performed beautifully. The scene where she tries to come onto Elton before being interrupted and suddenly feels stupid and embarrassed is incredibly real. The obsession people have over the Doctor is another fantastic idea. It's a story that has so many ways to go. And even if you don't like the direction it takes, I still think it has to be praised for delving into something that hadn't been explored before. Also, for a show to take a risk like this early on, remember it's only series 2, I think that's really cool. It's not great, it falls flat on its arse a lot of the time and it doesn't have any restraint. We all know the joke at the end. But I do think there's a charm to this story. It's very 2006 and I mean that as a compliment. Okay, let's talk about the arc. It's just Bad Wolf again, isn't it, really? It's no longer writing, Torchwood is just a phrase that pops up every episode. It's less obvious than Series 1, but it really is just the same thing. And on rewatches, it can kind of get slightly annoying, just because it doesn't add anything. I think the Bad Wolf thing works because 1, it's Series 1, so a simple little Easter egg mystery works for a family show. But 2, the words popping up everywhere does mean something in the end. It's a message that Rose leaves herself. Cool, simple, but effective. Torchwood, however, is just the name of an institute. It being mentioned every episode has no overall purpose. They could have just name-dropped Nationwide into each episode and it would have had the same effect as the plot, albeit slightly weirder. I think you can take out all the name drops, just keep Queen Victoria starting it at the end of Tooth and Claw, and it would have had the same effect that it does when it reappears in the final two-parter. Now, it's not something I hate or dislike that much, mainly because it is just nothing. Like, it's not an arc that ruins any enjoyment of the stories, it's nothing that changes any lore or has any repercussions later on, it's just a bit bland. The better arc of the series is the Doctor and Rose's relationship, the dependency on each other and their growing confidence of being invincible. However, as I said before, if you're not a fan of the romantic stuff in Doctor Who, it's fair to say that this series probably isn't one of your favourites. So why is it so beloved by casual viewers? If you looked at a lot of fan rankings, you'd be forgiven for forgetting just how loved this series was, and still is in the minds of casual viewers, many who have since stopped watching the show. This series was a winner in terms of Saturday entertainment, and the reviews from both critics and audiences prove that. Even when you get a few duds, the overall feeling was positive, and I think it's kind of easy to see why. There's a lot of fun, fast-paced adventures, the monsters are for the most part great, yeah, the scribble is shit, but the cat nuns, werewolf, clockwork droids, the Ood, the devil himself make up for it. Throw in the Cybermen and the Daleks and you've pleased a lot of people. As I've already mentioned, the character work is excellent and people really became attached to these characters, yet the action was never sidelined for these moments, still packing the season with many action sequences and suspenseful moments to keep both kids and adults engaged. Also, fans may not like a romantic story, but the general public do. They're kind of obsessed with it. Look at any tea time drama, big sitcom, Sunday Tweed period show, any of the soaps, and there's usually a romantic plot or a will they won't they that gets viewers invested. And as this was the first time Doctor Who had explored this kind of plotline, people lapped it up. Made even better by having two very good looking people as your leads. It may sound a little shallow, but people like what they like. It's kind of how the whole industry works a lot of the time. People like familiarity, and romance is familiar. It doesn't surprise me that Series 2 of Fleabag was even bigger than Series 1. It has a romantic will they won't they at the centre of it. David Tennant and Billie Piper's chemistry was incredibly watchable and their relationship was incredibly believable. It was dealing with themes such as love, family, loneliness, abandonment, growing old, growing up, and death, all while balancing the whimsy of early Saturday sci-fi. And although this series has issues, I'm calling the video the messy second album because it does have aspects of it, this series really was a triumph, and it does have some of the greatest moments and characters from these early seasons. And of course, it has this ending. This isn't my favourite finale. I think it has its issues, but if there's one thing this era was good at, it was packing an emotional punch when it needed to. So many little things can kind of be forgiven in this era due to how well the character beats were handled and how they connected with an audience. It's partly why I think the latest era has struggled with its endings. People don't just dislike the resolutions, but it's not enough for them to feel latched onto in terms of characterful moments for them to forgive the silliness of naming your kid after a lamppost. Army of Ghosts is paced incredibly well, starting immediately with Rose telling us that this is the story of how she dies, instantly producing a sense of intrigue, suspense and threat. We as the audience now know that this show will change its leads, and we've witnessed many character deaths over the last 2 seasons, so for all we know, this could be true. This could be the end of Rose Tyler. We'll come to learn one day that actually nothing is the end of Rose Tyler, but for now, this stands. Another reason why I think Series 2 is better than some people give it credit for is its ability to wrap up all the storylines that they've been following over the last 2 years. We hear a lot about a 5-year plan or a 2-season arc, but neither have felt as well crafted as these 2 series. Everything feels like it was planned from the beginning. I doubt it was, but in a way that's even more impressive, to craft something that feels so natural. In Series 1 we see Jackie lose Pete, in Series 2 we see Parallel World Pete lose Jackie, and then in the final they reunite. Mickey's bravery is a massive contrast from the first time we meet him in Series 1, but it's not a sudden change. It's been building throughout the whole series, and it feels like we were always heading for this moment. And the fact that all this character work is being done while also dedicating time to both the Cybermen and Daleks shows just how good this creative team were at balancing the show's many different aspects. It's this down-to-earth realism met with the craziness of Doctor Who world that creates an energy for this series, and as an era as a whole, that has never quite been achieved again. Rose Tyler's exit is a perfect example of just how emotional character moments were more important to this era than world-changing or complicated arcs. The exit is emotion turned up to 11, subtlety is out the window, but that's fine. Rose was a character that many people adored, a character that was never going to just one day leave the Doctor, so her ending had to be sudden and brutal. And I really like the fact they didn't just kill her off. Trapping her in the parallel world with her family is such a nice ending, really bittersweet, but a clever way of doing a companion exit. I'm all for killing off characters, but I think if they had killed off the first companion of New Who, it would have left quite a bitter taste in viewers' mouths. And there's not much else to say about this ending. Like, you've made it this far through the video, you know what happens, you know it works. And if you don't think it works, please do comment because I'd love to know why. Doctor Who Series 2 is an odd one. It has more lows than Series 1, but it still reaches the heights of the first season as well, delivering amazing episodes such as the U2-parter. I think some of the issues people have with this series actually annoy me more in later ones. Like, the romance element works here, it's an interesting story to tell, we just don't need it so often moving forward. The characters are strong, the monsters for the most part are great, and the iconography is still front and centre. Daleks flying over Canary Wharf is brilliant, and if these shots don't make you smile, you may be dead inside, because this is just fun. And fun is probably the word for the series. Nothing groundbreaking, nothing too experimental, but crammed full of fun creatures, stories and adventures. As long as you ignore the Idiot's Lantern. A series that includes the best 2-parter of Doctor Who and one of the worst. Okay, you know how this works by now. We're going to talk about the highs, the lows and the Dalek Squidward that is Doctor Who Series 3. And I'm excited for this one. This season has some bangers. It has a lot of meh, it has some issues, it has Jesus Doctor, and I'm really interested to know what you think of my opinion on the Jones family as a whole, but I think this series overall has confidence. They know Doctor Who is working and the series is unapologetically big, with big ideas and returning characters and one of the best episodes of all time thrown in the mix. This is Doctor Who Series 3, the ultimate mixed bag. Is this as good as the Christmas Invasion? No. Is it a little over the place at times? Yes. Does it make me smile like a sugar-intoxicated child? 100%. I'll be the first to admit that I think my nostalgia for this episode clouds my judgment. I can understand people not enjoying this one. It's very loud, Donna is at her most vocal, and the plot is very silly at points. So if this isn't for you, fair play. It's not for my mum either. You'd get along well. I, however, can't help but love it. I think it's a silly romp perfect for Christmas viewing, and I think it's paced brilliantly, balancing its action set pieces with smaller, intimate moments, giving the audience some wonderful character beats while also never letting them feel bored. It's just a proper family pleaser. I think there's something for everyone, or at least it's trying to offer it. Its action is big. I love the TARDIS taxi chase. I think it's fun and looks amazing. The performances are all very strong. Tennant is brilliant in this, finding that lovely balance between grief-ridden traveller and fun Christmassy alien. The Rachnos looks amazing. You can tell it cost a fortune, but it's money well spent because it just pops off the screen. And Sarah Parish's performance is pitched perfectly. Creepy camp for Christmas Day. I also really like how this episode deals with the departure of Rose. We'll be talking a lot about Rose in this video because her presence hangs over Series 3 like a fart in a lift. Maybe fart's too strong. An odour. Someone else's sandwich. I never like the smell of someone else's sandwiches. However, I think Rose's departure offers some really lovely insights to the 10th Doctor here. A Doctor who is quite nostalgic in nature, a person who falls in love easily and really needs someone by his side, even more than other incarnations of the character. The little moment where he mentions last Christmas having dinner with the Tylers is just great, and I love that he can never finish his stories about her because it hurts too much. He's just grieving in this, and he can really do without Donna's nonsense, making him slightly harsh or brash at times, which never crosses into the line of cruelty. Also, it's nice continuity. If the Doctor was suddenly fine and was acting like the last 2 seasons never happened, it would feel really weird and would undermine everything that came before. This bit is stupid. I could do without this. This isn't sad grief, this is just pathetic. Get a grip of yourself, man. And like the Christmas invasion, I like the darker elements that are sprinkled within the story. There's nothing as visually dark as the people standing on the edge of the buildings, but the way the Doctor acts at the end of this really shines a new light onto the character and sets up the final conversation between Donna and him really nicely. I just like this episode, there's really not much else to say about it. It's just a fun Christmas Day romp with good performances and acts like a nice closure to Ten and Rose's arc. If only. So with Donna rejecting the Doctor like they're at a school disco and with Rose being trapped behind some plasterboard, it was time for us to be introduced to New Who's second full-time companion. The character of Martha Jones is very underrated. Now, she has her fans, some people love her, but with casual viewers, I don't think she's as fondly remembered as the other companions from this era. And though we'll get onto why that might be later, I do think that's a shame. I think as a character, she's incredibly strong and has some really interesting traits that we don't see in other companions from this era or others. I like how she kind of has her life together. Yeah, her family are falling apart, but like her as her own is doing well. She's working towards becoming a doctor. She seems very happy, very sure of herself. She's not someone who dreams of running away or of a better life, which, although makes perfect sense to write a companion that way, can become a bit stale if overdone. She's very different to Rose, immediately feels more grown up, more sure of herself. And it's a contrast that works both in terms of storytelling, but also keeping the show fresh. Also, in keeping with this era's knack of casting strong actors, Freema excels in this role. She's so watchable and brings a great energy to the screen that plays off very well with Tennant's. We are first introduced to her in the series opener Smith and Jones, and this may be one of my favourite series openers. It just has everything I like about this era of Doctor Who. It's big, it's loud, it has great monsters and aliens, it's incredibly fast paced but with enough room to let important moments breathe, and like I said at the beginning of this, it just feels confident. It's a big series opener with great visuals and fun ideas like the hospital being transported to the moon. It's just very in your face and I love that. Why is that hard to say? The Jadoon. The Jadoon are fantastic aliens. I'm really surprised they haven't been used more than they have. I just think there's a lot of story potential in brutish intergalactic police. I adore the evil thirsty lady and her leather-clad men. That's a Eurovision band right there. It just feels very sure of itself. This is a show that's doing well. It knows it's successful and it's just having as much fun as it can while keeping with the tone that viewers have come to expect. Also, it does a really good job at introducing Martha. She's smart, quick thinking, and she impresses the Doctor immediately, and how they're thrown together in this adventure just feels natural. I will say that Tennant is insane in this episode. I've spoken before about how energetic he is on screen, and Christ does he prove me right in this one. He's off his fucking head and I really enjoy it. The only major gripe I have with this story is the introduction of yet another unnecessary romance. It starts almost immediately, and although it's not awfully distracting in this one, it goes on to really complicate my feelings with the series overall. Also, it just feels very forced. This kiss moment never works for me. I know it's given a reason in the script, but let's be honest, they just wanted to have them kiss. You could have really easily found a different way of doing that without them kissing, and it would have worked just as well, if not better. But mainly, I really like how the Doctor and Martha is written in this episode. I like that after Rose's exit and Donna turning him down, he's unsure if he's ready to travel full-time with someone else. It's a nice dynamic, and it's a shame that a lot of it gets shafted in the very next episode. Right, I have a lot of problems with this episode, so here's a few positives first. I love the witches. I think they're great. I really like how this era as a whole matches the episode's style and tone around the historical figure they meet. Charles Dickens has ghosts, Agatha Christie has a murder mystery, Shakespeare has witches. It's fun and it works. And the 3 performances are amazing, the makeup is great, and it still holds up today. I also love that this poor guy gets eaten for just being horny. Like, this attack has nothing to do with the plot, it's just a massacre of this man for no reason, and that's hilarious. Dean Lennox Kelly is very charismatic as Shakespeare. It's not a subtle performance, but I doubt the man who wrote Romeo and Juliet was, so it fits. Also, as a writer, I enjoyed that it's an episode dedicated to the power of words, even if the idea does become messy as the episode goes on. But that's kind of it. The rest is bad. The rest is really pretty bad. The Doctor is just an arsehole in this one, like an awful person. And unlike the Runaway Bride, where he's a little brash or insensitive due to his own grief, here it just feels mean. There's a cruelty to it that's very out of place and doesn't really work when we're trying to get audiences on board with a new companion. As I said before, Rose was incredibly popular, so you really need to dedicate time to audiences getting to know and liking Martha. So having the Doctor being so cold with her, rude to her for absolutely no reason at times, goes against the main thing that this episode should be doing, cementing their relationship. If you look at most companions' first adventure in the TARDIS, the majority of the episode is dedicated to them coming to terms with this new life and deciding if it's for them, and the Shakespeare Code barely does that. You kind of don't want Martha to stay with the Doctor at the end, she's better off without him. Personally, I think that a showrunner should write the companion's first TARDIS trip. It's just such an important aspect of the show and the character development, and it feels weird giving it to someone else. There's a few times when it has worked, such as Donna and Clara, but they had already been established already. The scene I can't stand and kind of has everything I don't like about the episode is this one. The whole thing from the very beginning annoys me. Firstly, the whole bed bit winds me up. Just share the damn bed. You've just seen a man drowned by magic. I think the last thing on your mind right now is the awkwardness. And, okay, no, the awkwardness would be fine. It's just, you've just met, that's fine. It's the fact it's played with the sexual tension from Martha that just feels weird. It's that forcing the romantic storyline that just sticks out so much. It's not needed here at all, but the show feels like it has to do it. And then, of course, you have the Doctor, who just straight up tells Martha he wishes she wasn't here and was with Rose instead. Which, one, just a horrible bit of characterisation. That doesn't add anything to him apart from making him incredibly unlikable out of nowhere. Two, again, that's not going to help an audience feel any attachment to Martha if the show is reminding us of Rose every 5 seconds. And three, makes no bloody sense. What do you mean Rose would know what to do? I'm sorry, I don't think she would. She was smart, she was clever, fine, but she didn't go to fucking Hogwarts. She doesn't know anything about witches. Like, this one scene alone has everything wrong with the episode. The comedy doesn't land, the character beats feel out of place and forced, and a completely misguided way of crafting our protagonist relationships. I'm not saying that they have to be buddy-buddy, a bit of tension is perfect. If anything, it's needed in dramatic writing. But not like this. And unfortunately, this vibe pops up throughout the series, and it's one of the things that muddies this season so much for me. There's some fantastic things to come, some amazing stories, but these moments of unnecessary romance barely ever feel earned. Barely. We'll get to the one that works later. But first, why have I called this the ultimate mixed bag? A lot of the time, not just in Doctor Who, but in most TV shows in general, definitely if they're following a Monster of the Week or anthology format, it usually goes one or two ways. It's either pretty strong, with the occasional weak story thrown in, or it's kind of weak, with the occasional masterpiece that makes you wonder why the rest hadn't felt like this. It happens all the time, and it's kind of natural. Not everything is going to be the best thing ever, but it's also rare that everything is going to be crap. Definitely if the format allows you to experiment and change it up each week. However, in my opinion, Series 3 doesn't fit into this. At times, it's incredibly strong, with stories that have lived on in the minds of fans and casual viewers ever since they were first broadcast. But then, surrounding these are some really weak, really off episodes that feel like they're from a completely different series, perhaps a completely different creative team. I like the opener, but that's followed by the Shakespeare Code. However, that's then followed by Gridlock, an amazing episode full of incredibly witty dialogue and emotional moments that stick the landing every time. Gridlock is experimental. It's got some really big and weird ideas, from the mood patches to the motorway, and it all creates a very interesting setting for a story that explores some pretty heavy themes. Also, I like the way the Doctor and Martha are written in this episode. Their dynamic is great. I like that the Doctor takes her to New Earth. If I'm being picky, it could have been slightly subtler, that he's trying to relive the good old times, but the concept of that is good. The ending is stunning, with Martha finally getting Doctor to open up as they sit alone in this empty, rundown street. The writing is so well crafted, the acting pitch perfect, the music is beautiful. And the Doctor talking about his home planet in this way isn't just the perfect ending to this episode, but an amazing scene that's been building up over the last 3 seasons. I just think this is a very underrated episode overall, and one of the best scripts Russell T Davies ever wrote for the show. This is followed by the Dalek two-parter, the weakest Dalek story in the entire era. Tonally, it is so different from all the other appearances of these iconic villains that it just doesn't fit into the Dalek story that they're trying to tell throughout this tenure. There's some nice bits, there's some lovely little moments, and I give it credit for trying something different, but overall the whole thing just falls flat. I think the first part is better than the second. Not by much, but it does feel stronger. It feels less bogged down than the second part does. Part 2 always feels so all over the place and if it's rushing to the finish line. There's also a much better Doctor Who story to be told about the Great Depression. It's been long enough now. We can have another crack at it. The Lazarus Experiment is fine. I don't hate it as much as some people do, but it's not very memorable. I think the concept and the ideas are much stronger than the execution. It also always feels like it has 2 endings. I don't know if that's just me, but it has 2 endings that are exactly the same. He turns into the big creature, he has a big fall, he dies. Wait, he's not dead, turns into the big creature again, has a bigger fall, actually dies. I like that Martha sticks up for herself at the end of this, but again, the Doctor's treatment of her just doesn't ring true. Like, he's not an idiot, he's not cruel, so he could be a lot softer and subtler and still get the story across. This episode does have this woman though.
Don't be ridiculous. The biggest danger here is choking on an olive.
This actress had one line and a dream, and she delivered it. What a performance. Olivia Colman, eat your heart out. And now, let's talk about 42. You'll notice that I'm talking much more about each episode of this series than I did for the 2 previous videos, and that really is due to just how much this series changes in quality as it goes on. Like, nothing is particularly dreadful, I don't want you to think I hate this series, but it really does shift a lot from being brilliant to meh. And I know 42 gets a lot of hate, but if this is the ultimate mixed bag series, then this is the ultimate mixed bag episode. Because I agree with most of the criticisms when it comes to the first half of the story. I think people are fair to be harsh on it, because the first half is not good. I don't like it, and it's what puts me off of watching it on rewatches. The side characters aren't very interesting, there's some overacting going on, the plot doesn't really get interesting until the halfway mark. I like the idea of the episode in real time, but it kind of breaks its own rules almost immediately, which is a shame. However, as soon as the Doctor rushes off to save Martha, we get this scene, and the whole episode switches up a gear, and suddenly becomes quite gripping. The 2 central performances are stellar, the relationship between the Doctor and Martha is incredibly well written, their care for each other really shines through in a way that hasn't really been allowed earlier on in the series. It all feels very claustrophobic, very dark and desperate, the music really fits with the overall tone, and I think it's some of Chibnall's strongest writing for the show. He allows himself to write some darker stuff, an element and attempt at horror that is missing in a lot of his future stories. Is it a great episode? No, but that's because the first half of the script feels wildly different to the second, and once you've annoyed or bored or turned off your audience, it's very hard to get them back on board. Which is why I think people dislike this episode, because the first half sours the taste of the second. And maybe you just hate this story. That's fine, you are allowed to. But I'd probably give it a 5 out of 10. A decent concept that fails to deliver at first, but finds its feet a little too late, while still delivering some good moments of Doctor Who. A few good things, a few bad things. You could say it's a mixed bag. And then we got this story. I want to apologise in advance for the passion you are about to hear as I talk about this 2-parter, because my god is it good. This is, without a doubt, my favourite story in Doctor Who. I adore it, not just as a Doctor Who episode, but just as a piece of television drama as a whole. It's so beautifully written, wonderfully crafted and produced, with performances that just sing. The episode begins with the Doctor and Martha pouring into the TARDIS, on the run from something we are yet to learn about. From the off, we are just thrown into the story, and the tension and the intrigue builds at a rapid pace. However, just before we get any information, we slam into a different scene, a much calmer, relaxing tone. The Doctor has just woken up, but we know something's wrong. Something's different. Martha enters as the housemaid, and we learn that this isn't the Doctor, but instead John Smith, a teacher who dreams of being the Time Lord we know and love. He is completely and utterly human. Roll title card. That is just a great opening. In writing, you're always taught to hook your reader or viewer in the first few minutes, and this episode just excels at that. This is such a strange and new direction for the show to take, and such a weird opening unlike any other we've seen. It leaves us with a ton of questions and makes you want to continue watching for the answers. It also feels incredibly grown up, much more sophisticated in its approach and storytelling, and yet never alienates young viewers. It's different, sure, but it's still easy to follow and get invested in. What follows this opening is a fantastic story detailing the human Doctor's romance with a matron called Joan. Martha's desperation to do the right thing without the guidance of the Doctor while still trying to cope with her heartache, and the family of Blood, a great group of villains as they try and track down the Time Lord in the pursuit for immortality. There is so much going on here, and yet it never feels cluttered, giving each storyline and character room to grow naturally. None of the characters, even the small side ones, feel pointless, with each helping to build the world that surrounds this very delicately plotted story. And this two-parter explores a lot of interesting themes, including life, death, love, family, war, and humanity. And a lesser script would struggle to balance all these different strands, yet Paul Cornell and Russell T Davies, he did a lot of work on the script too, make it look effortless. The little moments of comedy feel real, the emotion never feels forced, it's genuinely moving without manipulating its audience, and the romantic storylines, the thing that sometimes gets in the way of this era, has never felt more compelling or needed. I know I've banged on about Martha pining over the Doctor being a fault of this series, but I think in this episode they actually do something with it. It's not just a trope of the show or a cheap moment of tension, but instead it's built entirely into the journey that Martha goes on over the course of these 2 episodes. If anything, it shows how heavy-handed it was in the earliest episodes, and I think had it been toned down, it wouldn't have harmed this story at all. Instead of her being head over heels in love at the beginning, it could have quietly built up over time. Perhaps as she's travelling with this charismatic stranger, she begins to feel something more than friendship like she originally thought. Perhaps there's a look that lasts a little too long, or a line of dialogue that implies more than she meant. And then, in this masterpiece, we can establish just how her feelings have grown. Because in both parts, Martha? Who the fuck is Martha? In both parts, Martha and the Doctor/John Smith's relationship is brilliantly handled. She gets annoyed with him, feels incredibly abandoned and let down by him, but still cares and is still willing to go to great lengths to protect him. Also, John Smith's romance with Joan isn't unnecessary like a lot of the others, but instead makes perfect sense. 10 is the romantic Doctor. He is the Casanova Doctor. So of course, once made human, he does the most human thing, fall in love easily. His and Joan's dynamic is immediately realised and is pitched perfectly. Never feeling underdeveloped, but also never drifting into corny or rom-com territory. And this is helped by their chemistry. David Tennant and Jessica Hines have worked with each other quite a few times, and it always feels so real. They really are the perfect pairing on screen. And the emotions in this story are so raw. Tennant is acting his arse off in this one and effortlessly switches between the openness of John to the colder, more reserved Time Lord that allows us as an audience to learn so much about this character. And all of this is happening with World War I approaching, just adds that extra layer of fear and sadness. It's just great. It's really fucking good. I haven't even spoken about the family. The fucking family. Harry Lloyd as Baines gives what might be one of the greatest guest star performances in the show. He's so menacing, so creepy without ever overplaying or forcing anything. He makes some pretty big choices in his performance, but they fit the character so well that they never stand out as anything other than perfect. Also, the villains have a real presence in this. They have agency and are gifted with a lot of screen time. They aren't an afterthought or an inconvenience to the plot, something I feel sometimes happens in more recent stories. Here the bad guys matter, and you can almost feel just how much fun they had writing for them. And this scene is probably my favourite 10th Doctor scene, or at least is in the top 5. The simplisticness of the dialogue as the Doctor slowly punishes the family one by one never fails to make me angry that I didn't write it. It's just perfect. The Doctor giving the family what they wanted in the worst possible way. This is how you do dark moments with the Doctor. And then in his next scene, it's just as good. He just expects Joan to be okay with him being a different man. He's so sure of himself, so cocky and assertive, completely different to the man she fell in love with. And I'm not saying I want every episode to be like this. We need the fun, pulpy episodes. Not every story can be an exploration into love or death or war. That'd be too much. But I wish we still got episodes like this. Because when the show takes itself seriously, not in terms of groundbreaking, mind-melting sci-fi, but just as a drama that deserves recognition, we end up with telly that's not only gripping, but a complete triumph of what British creatives can achieve on a small budget. I feel like I need a fucking lie down after that. I don't think I've been that passionate about anything in years. And very quickly before we continue, I just want to say a massive thank you to anyone that subscribed to the channel. We finally got 1,000 subscribers, which is just really cool. So if you haven't subscribed and you like the content, please do. I promise I will get a proper mic soon. It's on the list. It's on the fucking list. Okay, let's talk about Blink. I won't lie, I can't be asked to talk about or review Blink because you know it's good. You may think it's overrated, that's okay. People do bang on about this episode a lot, but for good reason. It's very good. It's not my favourite episode of all time. I think I made it pretty obvious which one is, but I do think it's an amazing example of how to tell a concise, unique story in 45 minutes. Instead, what I want to talk about is the technical aspects of the script and how this episode is crafted so perfectly on the page and how that translates so well to the screen. Actually, no, let's quickly talk about the 45-minute thing. thing. I've seen a lot of people argue that one of the problems with Doctor Who at the moment is the runtime of the episodes, and I just completely disagree. Yes, you can make the episodes an hour, but that wouldn't magically fix the issues. The pacing of a story doesn't just change because you've given a writer or director longer on screen. If anything, a lot of the time, it will just create a longer episode that is still badly paced. Or they'll see the extra runtime and try to cram even more things into it, creating an even messier or rushed version of the thing they first envisioned. Crafting a story takes a lot of skills, and one of those is restraint, while the other is knowing how to fit the big idea in your head into the medium that you're using to tell it. Inside Number 9 is brilliant at this. Honestly, it's a masterclass in writing and crafting stories. Each episode is half an hour, each has quite a lot of characters, and most of them are incredibly satisfying, with good character development, great storylines, and wonderful twists thrown in. Could you make some of them longer? Yeah, but do you need to? No, because Rhys Shearsmith and Steve Pemberton have worked incredibly hard to fit everything into that 30-minute segment without making anything feel rushed or out of place. And Blink is the perfect example of this in Doctor Who. This story is just jam-packed with good characters, great monsters and sci-fi ideas, while never feeling rushed or like anything is missing. Honestly, I know a lot of people like them, but if a show has a lot of deleted scenes, it usually means the writing wasn't concise enough. Okay, on to Blink's script. Exterior, Wester Drumlin's house, Night 1. Big forbidding gates, wrought iron the works, a big modern padlock on. Through the gates an old house, ancient, crumbling, overgrown. Once beautiful, still beautiful, in decay. These are the first few lines of the script, and already you can tell why this works if you've seen the episode. This description fits the entire tone of the whole story. Tone and vibe is realised from the very first page, the first little paragraph. This description has character, it has a voice. It's something I'm always saying when I teach writing. Make sure your script has a voice, and this gets it immediately. Now, Sally is meant to call the house sexy in this scene. I'm glad they cut it out. Control yourself, Moffat. But this description is the perfect opener. No fussing about. It's just straight to the point. This is a haunted house episode. This one is gonna be creepy. The other genius thing that the script does is that it makes its exposition a mystery. Now, exposition is needed in any script ever written, and when people say to cut it out, I always think they're teaching the wrong thing. Yes, sometimes it can be unnecessary, but some is usually always necessary. It's how you hide it that matters. The DVD extras that Larry obsesses over is pretty much the Doctor just telling us, the audience, all the exposition we need to know. It basically is just him explaining the concept of Blink at its most basic. Now, a lesser script would have this information just play straight through at the point we need it. However, Moffat, the horny Scot that he is, teases us with it throughout the entire script, showing the exposition's ankles without giving the entire thing away. This means when we finally get to the full video, it's no longer an exposition dump, but instead an answer to one of the episode's mysteries. It's also a really clever way of doing sci-fi that never alienates your main audience. I know sometimes it's nice to have really specific, detailed sci-fi stories, but Doctor Who's audience, definitely during this era, was very family focused. Anything too insane and you'll confuse, bore, or annoy those at home. But this melds the best of both worlds, telling a story that entirely relies on time travel while never confusing your audience or relying on them being sci-fi heavy fans. It doesn't think it's cleverer than it is, it never comes across as smart ass, it's just good storytelling. And this isn't the only time Moffat uses this technique. Instead of just telling us how the angels work, he shows us. But instead of just showing us, he drip feeds it through a smaller mystery, with a strange man at the door delivering a letter. Nothing in this episode is here only for the purpose of the story. Instead, it is the story. Everything, every scene, every moment is used to build the mystery, the tone, the plot, or the characters. Could this episode be longer? Maybe, but it doesn't need to be. It's such a well-crafted script designed to entertain, terrify, and enthrall you for 45 minutes. Okay, that's enough positives for a while. Few more negatives. Okay, if you're a massive fan of Martha's Family, firstly, I want to apologise for what I'm about to say, and secondly, why? What's wrong with you? It's not that they're bad, they're okay, but okay doesn't quite cut it when the side characters we've previously had or are about to get next year completely outshine them. I feel like none of them ever get the chance to shine, ever get the opportunity to be more than Martha's supporting characters. And what makes this even worse is they're all really good actors. Let them have their moment, let them fucking go for it. Their introduction in episode 1 is promising. It has a lot of potential. They're a fractured family with lots of issues under the surface that bubble up a lot of the time. There's hurt feelings there, there's betrayal, and there's the children of the family frantically trying to hold everything together. It's a very real dynamic. Okay, it's heightened in the episode, it is a bit full on, but also I've seen this family at pubs I've worked at. They exist and they're interesting and they are brimming with stories to be told. I also really like the subplot of the Jones family being used by Saxon. We'll talk more about that Saxon plot in a bit, but this idea with Martha's loved ones is great. It's such a shame that there's not more to it. And I think that's my main issue with the family as a whole. The ideas are good, what we get works for the most part, but there's just not enough of it. I feel like we get a snippet of a story that could be so much better. I also think it's one of the reasons Martha isn't remembered as fondly as the other companions of the era. With Rose, we got her mum and boyfriend, and later on her dad, all characters that were so important to her arc. We as an audience grew attached to them, felt for them, and were sad when they left alongside Rose. And later with Donna, we get Wilf. I will be talking a lot about Wilf in the next video, my god I love him. And he feels so real, so full of heart. Martha's family just exists in the show. They don't feel like they exist outside the episodes we see them in. I don't believe they have a well-lived life like I did with Wilf or Jackie. And a lot of these issues to me could have been fixed in the Lazarus experiment. This is the first time we see them again since the opening episode. This is when we need to get to know them fully. This is the Slevene two-parter of this series. A time for us to establish Martha's previous normal, and yet, I don't think we get it. There's definitely attempts at dramatic tension, but it all feels a little shallow. Francine just hates the Doctor from the off, with her seemingly hating the idea that her grown-up daughter might have a boyfriend. It just feels very controlling and not interesting, especially later on in the episode when you give her an actual reason not to trust him. I think it's a nicer story if she quite likes him to start with, or at least pretends to for Martha's sake, and then she's told he's dangerous and she flips, completely changing her opinion on this stranger who just crashed into her daughter's life. That's a more compelling drama. And I kind of think that's what they're going for. I think they want Francine to be protective, but instead she comes across unnecessarily controlling and difficult. Tish is fine, but doesn't really get to do much. She's very much there for plot reasons and little else. I do like how unlucky she is at work. I think there's a whole running gag there they could have done, but that's kind of it. Leo might be one of the most pointless characters ever to grace the show. He just doesn't do anything, and honestly it wouldn't surprise me if most people forgot he existed. I just think you could cut him out, give what little screen time he has to someone else, and it would work just as fine. I mean, the show completely forgets him in the final. We see him walking along the seaside before everything kicks off, and that's it. He won't even remember the year that never was, and that just feels odd. However, like I said, I do think there was a potential for these characters, and this potential could have been realised more in the series arc. At times, the Harold Saxon arc is similar to Bad Wolf and Torchwood, just a name that pops up throughout the series. His name is mentioned a lot, and that is kind of it, apart from the most interesting element that revolves around the Joneses being manipulated by him and his henchmen. I think the bad guys using Martha's family as a way to track her and the Doctor down is a really good idea, turning them against the one man who could save not just them but the world. They're unknowingly causing great harm to their daughter while lying to her in an attempt to bring her home. This is so good and could have been so much bigger. The little snippets we get of this are lovely, but I just wish it had been built up more. I would have been happy with every other episode just cutting back to Earth and allowing this plot to develop away from the story of the week. A little weekly scene that plays almost like a mystery as we realise they're falling more and more for the lies they're being fed. I think this could have given us a better understanding of the family and would have made us feel and care for them sooner. I also think it would have made Mr. Saxon feel more threatening from the off, this mysterious man that's pulling the strings from the shadows. I know this is basically what we got, but it could have been so much richer, and it would have been a nice contrast to the two previous series arcs. That being said, I do really like how the final story naturally builds on what we've been shown from the previous weeks. It's very like Series 1, and it works so well. The Yana, you are not alone thing is simple but effective. The reveal of Yana having the pocket watch is a brilliant bit of drama. Human Nature and Family of Blood introduced the pocket watch so well that it never felt like its presence was just to build towards the final. No one was expecting it to come back and be used in such a clever, jaw-dropping twist. It's just such a perfect example of how to build tension naturally without forcing the information down your viewers' throats. I actually think Utopia as a whole is a really well-written piece of drama. It doesn't just feel like it's building towards a cliffhanger, but instead delves deeper into character relationships. Captain Jack's return is handled really well, and I love the scene when he and the Doctor discuss immortality while he stands in a room that should kill him outright. It's just a really effective way of developing both theme and character, and I feel like we haven't had a scene like this in quite a while. This doesn't feel rushed, it doesn't worry that the audience is bored, it's just good dramatic writing. I'm not going to discuss the overall reveal of the Master because I've talked about it before on the channel, so if you want to go and watch that, either watch my Interstellar Song Contest review or Reality War, because the difference between the reveals in the latest series compared to this is just insane. It's like two completely different shows. But okay, let's discuss the final. If this is the ultimate mixed bag series, it feels only right that its final should be a complete mix of amazing storytelling and woeful decisions. Personally, for me, this is the weakest final of this era. It still has some amazing moments and some of that RTD character flair that he's so good at, but it also has some clunkiness and very little restraint. The sound of drums is better in my opinion than the Last of the Time Lords. Seeing the Doctor, Jack and Martha on the run, working together to desperately solve their issues is a really fun watch. It's full of tension, but also full of heart. This scene where they share chips and enjoy each other's company is really lovely. Again, it's a lot of exposition, but it masks it incredibly well. It also does a really good job at introducing the Master to new viewers. And I'm not talking about John Simm's performance yet, I mean the character in general. It immediately establishes the Doctor and the Master's relationship, this mix of hate and friendship and sadness that plagues both of them. It's been modernised, it's still got a more pulpy energy to the new series, but I do think it's pretty loyal to the concept of their dynamic. John Simm's performance is a lot. He's on one in this, I won't lie. My opinion of it changes depending on my mood. Sometimes I quite like his zaniness, sometimes it pisses me off. I do love all the subtler moments. The little scenes of quieter, more intense dialogue between the two Time Lords are some of the best scenes of the episode. Also, the Master's plot is very in keeping with the character's past too. This is a man that has always dreamed of being Prime Minister. He's only just now getting round to doing it. Another thing it does really well is establish lore for the show without ever bogging the episode down in any unnecessary, boring details. It explains their past, it expands on Gallifrey's history, but I never feel like the episode stops to do this. It's also not massively important to the actual story being told. We don't need a whole history lesson to get it, and I think that's good. It finds the perfect balance. They get Martha spot on in these episodes too. A few little bits annoy me in Utopia. I don't feel like we need the whole Rose jealousy in this scene. Like, Captain Jack thought Rose was dead, that's someone he cared about, let him be happy. But in the final two parts, Martha is so compelling. They really let her take the lead, both as an action hero, but also giving her a lot of the emotional payoffs. This is a woman that believes in herself, knows she's worthy, and knows that she can save the world. And during this, we get to witness how scared she is, how much her feelings for the Doctor drive her forward, but also hurt her. The Last of the Time Lords is a lot messier. I adore all the Martha stuff, again this is really strong, and the reveal of the Toclafane being the people in Utopia is incredibly dark. That's a lovely bit of tea time horror, and I want more of this please. Sod the kids, it's time we start scaring the adults again. The issues mainly come from everything else that isn't Martha. The Doctor's plot here just doesn't grab me, and the old Tennant and ET Tennant doesn't have the emotional punch I think they were going for. I don't mind them sidelining the Doctor to focus more on the companion, that's fine, but there's other ways to do it than just plopping him in a birdcage. Once again, I find Martha's family underused in the episode. Obviously we feel for them, you have to be heartless not to, but I want to dig deeper into who they are as people rather than just victims of the Master that we kind of know. Captain Jack is also criminally underused in this one. He doesn't really get much to do at all, and I think that's a shame. I know everything around this character now is incredibly complicated, but just as a character in general, I find him good fun, and I find it weird you would have him chained up for the majority of the story. The issue is, although this is definitely an epic conclusion, with a dystopian world and some great little action sequences, it's not exactly satisfying. It feels rushed at times, very muddled, and the ending is such an obvious reset button. Like, a reset button can be fine if handled right. Sometimes you want to do big grand battles without it affecting the future storylines, so that's where they can be used effectively. But for me, this one just feels very cheap due to it completely coming out of nowhere. And then of course we get Jesus Doctor. Every time I watch this, I just feel nothing. Maybe a bit of cringe, but definitely not the excitement or hope I think they were aiming for. This is RTD at his most RTD-ness. I do kind of respect how stupid it is, but I don't like it. But once again, the era does follow the messiness with some wonderful character scenes. The Master dying in the Doctor's arms is wonderful, the performances, the music, everything just works. I really like Francine's moment of wanting to fire the gun. It's the most raw we ever get to see this character. There's so many things here, so many moments that work, but they are just surrounded by some stuff that just doesn't. However, I do like Martha's exit. Martha leaving on her own doesn't just fit the character perfectly, but also is the complete right decision for the show as a whole. After Rose leaving the show in such a dramatic way, it feels right that the next companion's exit would be more subtle, more character-driven than plot-driven. And again, it's here where her feelings for the Doctor does work, and their dynamic and banter as friends really shine. I think we see a lot of potential of their relationship in this scene, which is slightly odd as it's the last one as a full-time companion. But Martha's character arc is handled really nicely. She does go on a journey, and her deciding to stay back and look after her family, while I'm also guessing catch Leo up on a hell of a lot. It works with the person you've been watching over the course of the series. I just think it's so funny. And Leo just has no idea what's happened. Why is he there? Okay. I had a break. Let's get to the end of the video. This has taken so fucking long. Although I've spoken before about the show recently relying too much on nostalgia, I do think if anyone is to return, Martha does make the most sense. I think there's still room to grow her character, to explore more of her wants and needs. I'm not saying the show should do it, I think it really needs to move forward, but if it's going to, Martha seems like the right choice to me. At least there is some story there still to be told. Series 3 of Doctor Who is an odd one, including some of my favourite episodes of all time and a monster that will go on to remain in the public consciousness. And when you look at it like that, this video essay really should have been a bit more positive than it was. And I'm not saying I don't like it. There's no point in me making a video just gushing over all the good stuff. It's a mixed bag full of great episodes, episodes with potential, and episodes that should have known a bit better. It has the unfortunate thing of following straight on from Rose's departure, one of the most successful companions in the show's history, all while the creative team still seem uncertain of letting her go too. Doctor Who Series 4 is without a doubt one of the most beloved seasons of the show. With great viewing figures and usually at the top end of most fan rankings, it seems Series 4 excelled in creating a season of TV that worked for both massive fans and casual viewers. But did it? Is it really the show's crowning jewel, or is it overrated? That's what we're looking at today. This is Doctor Who Series 4. Genius or overrated? Okay, strap yourself in, because this is going to be a long one. As always, let's start with Christmas, and this time we've got the most Christmassy thing of all, an horrific real-life accident that claimed the lives of hundreds, but make it spacey. Voyage of the Damned takes place on a spaceship called the Titanic that sails through the stars, offering a luxury holiday cruise for those rich enough to afford it. Very quickly, the Doctor arrives and mayhem ensues as the show pays homage to the disaster movie genre. I've always liked it when media, may that be TV or film, go full in with a genre piece. Although subverting expectations can be fun, sometimes committing fully to one genre, utilising all the imagery and tropes and feelings that come along with it, can be just as entertaining and immersive. It's one of the reasons I love the film Crimson Peak. It's just a gothic romance through and through and delivers on those aspects beautifully. Voyage of the Damned does this too. With a high death count, grand setting and intense action sequences, the show embraces all that comes with this high energy genre. Although longer than a usual episode, it flies by, never dropping the pace even during its quieter, more characterful moments. It has everything that you'd expect from this type of film, with characters sacrificing themselves, a famous star as one of the leads, and a plot, though at times very flimsy, never fails to be fun. It really is the perfect story structure for Christmas Day viewing, with enough to entertain the whole family. Kylie Minogue is in this one, which is still an insane thing to say all these years later. I think I'm right in saying this is the biggest guest star the show's ever had. I can't think of another one that's on the same level of celebrity. And although a moment of ultimate stunt casting, make sure you say that right, Christ, it does work. She's pretty good in the role, and once again, this kind of casting makes perfect sense for Christmas Day. And it did work. You know, this was the second most watched programme of 2007 with 13 million viewers, beaten only by EastEnders, a show with just as much death and robot acting. It's just an episode that oozes confidence, and you've got to praise the creative team for going full out on this one. The settings look great, the angels are so simplistic yet effective, the concept of them killing people with their halos is the perfect mix of horror and tongue-in-cheek that this era of Doctor Who balanced so well. You can really feel this is a series in its stride, unafraid to make big, bold decisions and to treat itself like an epic that deserves your attention. The episode does begin to lose itself towards the end. The last act definitely is the weakest, with a villain that doesn't fit the epicness of his story, and an ending that tries a little too hard to pull on the heartstrings for my liking. I can see why people liked it. I've said before that the general public love romance, especially at Christmas. But after many customer service jobs, I find the general public infuriating and believe they themselves should never know love. That being said, I know this is yet another romance, but I will give it a bit more of a pass than usual, just because it's fucking Kylie Minogue. If you have the opportunity for the Doctor to kiss Kylie and you don't take it, then you should be nowhere near the writer's table. It's just something that you'd be silly to pass up when writing one of the most flirty, horny, slutty doctors of the show. The romance doesn't really do much for me, but I understand why it's there. And for a one-off character, they do establish their relationship very quickly, which is nice. I understand why they fall for each other a bit more than I do some of the other flings of the Doctor. Is it a perfect episode of Doctor Who? No, I don't think it is. But is it perfect for what it's trying to be? A big show-off epic? Yeah, I think it is. I think it nails the tone, and I would love Doctor Who to explore more genres in the future. I think episodes homaging different genres would be a great way to keep the Monster of the Week format while changing it up a bit. You'd have to balance tone incredibly well, so it still feels like the same characters in the same show, but it would be an interesting experiment that, if it worked, could really add something new to the series. A new series meant it was time for a new companion. Well, newish at least. Unlike previous series where we were introduced to a new character who over time we would grow to love, Series 4 took a different approach, returning to Donna Noble, who we last met in 2006's Christmas special, The Runaway Bride. This reintroduction is so effortless that it feels like it was always the plan. However, it wasn't. Originally, Series 4 was going to have a new companion called Penny, who, believe it or not, was going to have a romance with the Doctor. Fucking hell, Russell. I can't tell you just how glad I am that this never happened. One of the main things I like about this series is the theme of friendship, and the fact that so nearly didn't happen just shows how much romance became a trope of the show. Thank God Catherine Tate wanted to come back. I think the way they handled Donna's return to the show is really good. Originally, she was written as a comedy character for a special, and although she had some lovely little moments, you wouldn't think she'd be a rich enough character to hold an entire season. However, the show makes great effort to develop her early on, toning down some of her more intense traits in the special and allowing more natural, down-to-earth side to shine through. The relationship she's given with her grandfather, Wilf, we'll be talking more about Wilf later, I adore him, is such a nice way of giving Donna someone to care for while giving her someone who constantly roots for her, always wanting the best and believing in her in times when she doesn't. She's not completely different from her appearance in The Runaway Bride. She's still very funny, incredibly quick-witted with a kind heart, but it's all a little more layered, much more in tone with the season style of storytelling than the more in-your-face pacing of the Christmas specials. I think Partners in Crime is a fun series opener. It's a very traditional RTD era opening with a few lovely character moments and a few silliness thrown in for good mix. It does a good job at recapturing Donna and the Doctor's dynamic, which is played brilliantly by Tennant and Tate throughout. They've just got such a good energy when on screen together, and honestly kind of a gift for a writer to write for. You just know whatever you give them, they'll add this infectious charisma that will just elevate the scene. And let's be honest, it's lovely not to have a romance bubbling away. The fact they're just friends travelling is why the pairing is so good. It's a new area to explore for the 10th Doctor, a man who certainly needs friendship, needs someone to care about and someone to care and guide him. And it breaks the tiring mould of him either pining over someone or them pining over him. New ground for the era of the show. Huzzah! Never said huzzah before. I quite like it. Huzzah! But there's one aspect that Donna brings to the show that isn't just important to Doctor Who, but to storytelling in general. Storytelling lives and breathes tension and conflict. Conflict is what drives a story. It allows an audience to connect to and understand the characters and their motivations. Nearly every scene will have some aspect of tension. People usually misunderstand what that means. It doesn't mean like a blazing row or horrific death that has to be present in every scene, but there is usually something that guides us along. Conflict can be as big as a bomb about to explode, or could be as small as being late for a doctor's appointment. Now, the story structure of Doctor Who naturally has tons of conflict and tension built into it, with a protagonist fighting an alien in nearly every episode. I actually think at times the show tries too hard to make the biggest conflict ever, with far too many finals being end of the world, universe, galaxy based, which can become tired very quickly. However, what can sometimes be missing is the conflict between the Doctor and the companion. It feels very natural to make them friends, make them equals who travel around and have a laugh, and that's definitely part of the relationship. But it needs to be richer, with their differences being just as important as their similarities. And Series 4 gets this balance right, straight away. Donna is a more mature companion than what's come before. She's not easily blinded by the whimsy of the Doctor. She knows her own mind, has strong opinions, and doesn't ignore them. And this is most evident in the second episode of the series, The Fires of Pompeii. This episode is an odd one, and I don't see many people say that often, but tonally it's kind of insane. It's very jokey, almost sitcom-esque with its gags in the first half before switching towards a sadder, bleaker story at the end. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, by the way, it's just an interesting thing that the episode does that I don't see many people talk about. Almost from the off, Donna is desperate to save the people of Pompeii and can't quite believe that the Doctor is so against it. What I love about this is it's never played like Donna is dumb for not understanding the rules of time travel. Instead, she just couldn't care less. She sees people's lives as much more important than any Time Lord rules and never lets up on this, constantly trying her best to save someone. It's a really great way of doing a companion's first trip in the TARDIS. She's not awestruck by the wonder of it all, but instead horrified by its ruthlessness. And it allows the Doctor and the Donna to constantly spar with each other, growing and learning to understand one another without it feeling bland. It seems horrible to say, but sometimes niceness and everyone getting along really well can become boring. It's lovely to watch a friendship bloom, but too much and it feels sickly. The tweeness that never becomes anything other than nice. What I love about this is that we get to see just how strong their bond is. It feels fresh. Donna Donna speaks to the Doctor in a way Rose or Martha never would, and it echoes back really nicely to her first appearance when she tells the Doctor he needs someone. Just such a lovely, lovely beginning to a character's journey. It's so well crafted, and it's one of those things that I think has been missing from the show for a while. If I had any gripes about Donna in the early episodes of the season, I think she cries a little bit too much. It's just in most of the episodes, and I think it kind of loses its power. It makes sense in the Pompeii one and the Ood one, but personally I would have cut it from the Sontaran two-parter. You can show her pain and fear without tears, and sometimes that's more powerful. Someone desperately trying not to cry is even more heartbreaking than when someone fully breaks down. It's a nitpick I know that some of you will not agree with, including Russell T Davies. I can imagine him slating me in the most theatrical of ways, but I'd give as good as I get. Bring it on, Russell. I think she cries too much. But I think these early episodes of the series do a great job at establishing its tone, mixing comedy and drama in a way that never feels disingenuous or out of place. You'll notice I haven't spoken about the Rose scene at the end of episode 1, we'll get to her in the series arc later, but just as contained episodes, I think they're all really strong. Also, I've always loved Planet of the Ood. I think it's a really underrated episode, and it really cements the Ood as one of these era's best creatures. I think they're just brilliant. Okay, let's talk about Martha returning. Early on in the series, we return to planet Earth to check in with Martha Jones and see how her life is going since she left the Doctor at the end of Series 3. I really like the little continuity here with her calling the Doctor like she promised she would. This era, even when it's following the Monster of the Week format, always managed to make everything feel connected. It flowed in a way that never alienated new viewers, but also rewarded those who've been watching along, with little Easter eggs and character returns that meant something to the fans. It's nice, I like it. I also think it's great to go back to companions when they've left the TARDIS. There's just so much story to be told there, focusing on how travelling changed them, and I think pairing Martha, a woman who left on her own accord, with Donna, someone who was desperately trying to find the Doctor again ever since they first met, is a really lovely idea. It's that contrast and that little conflict, like I said, this series is great at conflict, that it just makes this so much richer. The little scene when Martha asks Donna if her family knows where she is perfect. It's a really big turning point for Donna, but also a great example of how Martha has changed and grown. It's simple character development executed perfectly. This two-parter does quite a good job at reintroducing the Sontarans in the modern era. I don't think it's as seamless as, say, the Daleks or the Cybermen, but there are some wonderful little things here. It captures their trait of them loving battle really well, and the moments of action are the exact kind of action you want in a two-parter like this. I don't think the plot is anything amazing, but it's entertaining, with small character scenes that elevate it above a standard Sontaran ROM. However, although I do like aspects of this redesign, I do think they're slightly too clean. I want to grubby them up a bit and make them look more like war-battled soldiers that they are. Again, it's a nitpick, but it's one I can never ignore when rewatching this story. I just feel like these guys have a skin routine, and that just feels wrong. My biggest issue with the story as a whole is mainly its use of Martha after the first act. Martha gets taken down to the basement by 2 clone soldiers and suddenly is face to face with this fucking thing. This design is amazing, by the way. I mean, just look at it. It's so horrible and gives you that instant reaction of fuck right off that it needs. It's great, I love it. But Martha is caught and turned into an evil clone, which she remains for the majority of the story. And although on paper this sounds fine, and to be honest, the episode does a good job at this story beat, I can't help but feel like it's a massive waste of the character's potential. As I said, a companion's life after the Doctor is just a concept brimming with stories. However, once you get rid of her for the clone plot, all that potential vanishes. I want to see actual Martha interacting with the Doctor more, interacting with Donna more, having an agency in the plot herself. I want to see more of this unit side of her and how that compares to how she was last season. The clone thing is fun, but it's not gripping. We know at the end Martha is going to be fine, so there's not much tension there. So it does kind of feel at times that we're just waiting for the Doctor to notice and fix it. And this is a shame because the bits we get of actual Martha are lovely, and maybe I'm being greedy, but I want more. And this might again feel a bit nitpicky, and to be honest, it kind of is. It's a very strong opening to a series that feels incredibly confident and aware of its popularity. There's barely an episode I don't like. Barely. Look, if you've made it this far through the video already, then you can kind of gather I think Series 4 is pretty damn strong. There'll be a few more nitpicks along the way. This is the series with the ultimate reset button, but mainly the episodes provide the fun, the scares, and the whimsy that I want from Doctor Who. All apart from this one. Now, I've seen people slate the Doctor's daughter before, and personally, I find that odd, because I just can't muster up much of an opinion on it. It's definitely not one I love and can talk about for days, but it's also not one I dislike enough to rant and rave about. It's just an episode of Doctor Who that has a slightly paint-by-numbers plot. Like, the performances are good, it looks alright, the Hath are quite cool, but it just happens. I feel its runtime, and I struggle to connect with any of it, and I don't know if that sounds harsh, I don't mean it to, it's just not for me. One of the main issues again is that it wastes Martha. Immediately it separates her from the Doctor and Donna, and they only reconnect right at the end. And this may have been fine if not for the Sontaran episodes, but they do the exact same thing. Both stories refuse to delve deep into the aftermath of travelling with a Doctor, which is just such a shame when there's so much you can explore with that. And Martha is very much treated like the B-plot here. I wouldn't go as far as saying she's an afterthought, but I also wouldn't be surprised if the first draft of this script didn't include her. Her presence barely, if at all, affects the main plot of the story. It's Donna that works out the numbers, it's the Doctor that ends the conflict, and it's Martha that has to scramble around in some mud and watch a half drown. I'm not saying she needed a massive arc, but just maybe a bit more than that. I just want more. I'm being greedy again. I wanted more. I do really like the little scene at the end when Martha says goodbye once again. Here we get to see the differences between Martha and Donna. One person happy to be home while the other is adamant they'll never stop travelling. And this is kind of what I mean. This could have been so much more. There's so much to explore there. It's barely a criticism at this point and just a desperate wish that we got it. Another slightly weaker outing of the series is the Unicorn and the Wasp. Now, as a kid, I adored this episode, and I remember vividly pretending to be the Wasp Man, which is something I didn't have to admit on the internet, so I don't know why I just did. Over time, I don't find it as fun as I once did. I think it's the only time Donna feels really out of character. Her caring nature isn't there, which is weird when she is such a character who wears her heart on her sleeve. There are still really good moments in this. Tennant is such a good physical actor, and this one allows him to play slapstick at times, which he just excels in. And due to it being a comedy script, obviously Catherine Tate delivers the jokes perfectly, even if I do think some are out of place. Again, no major criticisms. I completely understand people who adore this episode, but for me, it's just good. It's a fine episode of Doctor Who. I do love the murder mystery aspect of it though. It just makes perfect sense to write that for Agatha Christie. And I quite like the giant wasp. I'm a simple man. Bug but big. Perfect. Why not? I think Silence in the Library, Forest of the Dead may be my favourite story that Moffat wrote for the RTD era. It's just crammed full of amazing ideas, fantastic characters, and monsters that are so perfect that I can never decide if I want them to come back or not. And there are so many scenes in this that are brimming with emotion, but they always feel earned. And what I mean by that, because I say it a lot, is that sometimes you can feel a writer trying too hard to make something sad, and you can almost begin to feel a story being manufactured to manipulate emotions from an audience. And it feels odd to say because all stories are manufactured, they're works of fiction. And it is the writer's job to make you feel something, but there's an art to it. A good script feels natural, as if the story was always destined to go that way, where a bad script will feel forced. Does that make sense? Yeah, sorry, I'm going to say that makes sense. This two-parter is just so well crafted. It's got that Moffat flair that his best scripts have, while also keeping in the tone with this era of the show. He gives our main protagonist so much stuff to do. Everyone in this episode goes on a journey, but never quite how you'd expect. Miss Evangelista is the perfect example of this. A character who starts a little dim, meaning well, but not particularly strong or clever, who suddenly becomes a genius Snapchat filter in the second part. That's a ridiculous way to describe that, but that's kind of what happens. The twists throughout the story work perfectly, never making us as the audience feel cheated or deceived. Donna's heart and wit is balanced incredibly well. Tennant is at his greatest, and of course is the first introduction to Riversong, a character that will soon become a staple of the Moffat era. Now, I have my issues with Riversong. I don't think her character is always smooth sailing, with at times her arc becoming too convoluted for my liking. But that's a discussion for another video. We're coming to the Moffat era very soon. But here, River's introduction is pitched perfectly. She's a bit of a mystery, but that's not her main purpose. Instead, she has a fully realised character who is intriguing right from the start. This woman who seems to know everything about the Doctor, although he knows nothing about her. That's a great story. That is sci-fi. It's also great to see the Doctor so out of his depth. This is the 10th Doctor's third series, so it's nice that we're still getting these stories that show our main character in a new light, challenging him at every turn. It's one of the hardest things to get right about the show. The Doctor is always the cleverest person in the room, and that can be incredibly hard to write. So giving him this character who confuses him from the off is a perfect way of disarming that intelligence. But also, the 10th Doctor is the perfect Doctor to first meet Riversong. Also, I know that Big Finish have done stories and stuff, but I'm talking just in terms of the TV show. As I've said before, the 10th Doctor is a horny boy. He's the one who falls in love much easier than a teenager, and he thinks everyone he meets is the one. Honestly, he'd be an amazing person on first dates. He's that kind of Doctor. He's the first date Doctor. He, in theory, is the perfect person to have a time-travelling wife. He is the right character to go on that emotional romantic journey. And yet, due to him meeting River out of sync, he can't trust her. He doesn't have those feelings, and that kind of scares him. And that is just great drama. The man who falls in love so easily can't trust the person he will one day fall in love with. And once again, this is conflict. This series is so good at character conflict, and this conflict allows us to get a really good understanding of Riversong. We see and feel her pain, we watch as she desperately tries to buy the Doctor's trust, and we believe her feelings of love even though we've never seen her before. It's just a perfect character introduction, and then he goes and kills her off, and the mystery continues. Will we ever see her again? What happens now? Who actually is she? All of that is just beautifully left to be explored on another day. Meanwhile, Donna gets a lovely subplot to herself as she lives in this uncanny valley world of the computer. There's so many little bits of that Moffat flair that just makes this plot so rich. The children all being the same kids is great, Dr. Moon is this wonderful guide through the madness, and then Murray Gold's almost too perfect score just has that little extra offness that's needed to really sell the world. It's a very grown-up story with still enough scares and whimsy to keep the kids entertained. And that's one of the greatest things about the second half of this season, is not afraid to go dark, leading to one episode that shouldn't have worked and yet maybe is one of the best stories in 60 years of the show. When I say that Midnight shouldn't have worked, I'm not being dramatic. It's mainly set in one room, barely any special effects or makeup or weird visual stuff. It's a concept that really should fall flat on its ass within 2 minutes. Repeating words should not work as a Doctor Who monster. Not as basic as that anyway. You'd think it would have to be so outlandishly weird for that concept to work. However, Midnight really strips back all the weird and wacky whimsy of the show, forcing its characters in one location and having to deal with someone copying what they say like a child does when they want to be annoying. And it's fucking brilliant. It really is an episode that proves that Doctor Who can try its hand at anything. What other show could do this concept justice like this? It's just a razor-sharp script, paced brilliantly as the tension and conflict grows and grows until it reaches boiling point. Not a single word is wasted, not a single character feels out of place and pointless. The performances, the music, the directing, everything just working alongside each other to create just a brilliant, relentless 45 minutes. And that's the word for this one, relentless. This episode just constantly turns up the dial. First she copies, then she speaks at the same time, and then she steals your voice. It just never lets up. Now, I would never tell a writer to study the script unlike I would for some other RTD works. This script is an odd one, like even visually on the page you can tell it's unique. However, I would tell writers to study the mechanics of its storytelling. The slow-paced beginning, allowing the audience to get an understanding of the characters, is marvellous because it feeds you all the information you need as a viewer without ever being boring. And that's a very hard thing to write. I can't tell you how many scripts I've read that are so boring to start with because it's all basic, plain character introductions. Russell T Davies has always been incredibly good at introducing characters. I know some people haven't liked his latest era, me included, it has its problems, but I've seen people say that this means that RTD isn't a good writer, and I'm sorry, that's nonsense. You may not like his new style or vision for Doctor Who, but to discredit all his other work because of it is, in my opinion, lazy critique. The first 15 minutes of It's a Sin is a masterclass of character introduction, perfectly setting up the story as it goes. Same in A Very English Scandal, same in Years and Years, Cucumber, Queer as Folk. He's just very good at it, and it's evident here in Midnight. This is a standalone 45-minute episode, and yet by the end, you know all these characters. You know the ones that the experience will have changed, the ones that will pretend it never happened. You know their way of life, their way of dealing with trauma. Valerie has secrets she will take to the grave. That is a woman who has switched on a dime many times throughout her life. This isn't just a good Doctor Who script, but it's a masterclass how to use all the different elements and beats of a story. Also, I need to quickly praise the editing as well. This must have been an absolute ball ache to edit. This whole episode hinges on that final cut. Any sloppy editing and the whole thing would have collapsed. Every moment had to be meticulously chosen. The sound mixing had to be perfect. Not a single member of the production team had an easy time on this one, and the results prove that. The work is on the screen and it is just a triumph. Okay, pause button. Before we continue with the episodes, let's jump back a bit and talk about the series arc, and one particular blonde lady. I want to take you back to the 5th of April 2008. It's 6:20 in the evening and episode 1 of Doctor Who Series 4 has just started on BBC One. The iconic theme music blares out of your cheap TV speakers and you know for the next 45 minutes you're safe. It's just you, the Doctor, Donna and the stars. You giggle at the silliness of the adipose and fall instantly in love with Bernard Cribbins. You're desperate for the Doctor and Donna to spot each other, letting out an angry gasp every time they miss one another. You're in awe of the spaceship over London and you're just happy to know that your silly little blue box show is back and still as mesmerising as you remembered. And then Rose Tyler turns around and you nearly fucking die. The shocking appearance of Billie Piper may be one of the greatest little twists in Doctor Who history. A collective gasp went across the UK when she turned around, and suddenly we just knew we were in for a big series of telly. Over the course of the series, we waited for more answers, with her popping up occasionally throughout the build-up to the final. During this painful wait, we heard little glimpses of clues, including missing planets, disappearing bees, and something being on Donna's back. And although it's not a detailed, complicated, constructed arc that runs across the series, it may be one of the best build-ups Russell ever did for the show. While Bad Wolf and Tortured were incredibly obvious and the Saxon mentions built up over time, Series 4 was a little subtler in its approach. You'd be forgiven for missing the mentions of all the missing planets. There's something on your back that's mentioned in the Fires of Pompeii. It's just a fun, creepy phrase that you may have forgotten before it becomes meaningful. I feel like this series has a lot of fun with its hints, and it's probably one of the best to watch with someone new and watch them realise things as they go along. And then when it comes to Rose, I know people have their issues with her, definitely when her presence feels incredibly strong throughout Series 3, but her returning here does work incredibly well in my opinion, because it's not just a cheap trick for the audience. There is a promise of story here. It does matter. We know the Doctor is desperate to see her again. We know the reunion they would have, and we can't help but root for it. It's not just fueled by getting people talking. Of course, that's part of it, and rightly so. Word of mouth is incredibly important when it comes to TV, but it's rooted in emotion, in a story that's been being told ever since the start of this era. So let's talk about what may be the bleakest episode in the show's history, or at least one of them. Turn Left is another relentless episode, incredibly political, ferociously angry at times, depicting some of the worst traits of humanity. There's barely anything family-friendly about it. There's little nuggets of humour, but they are very few and far between as Russell T Davies throws Donna into a descent of pain and desperation. It's an incredibly grown-up piece of telly, and kind of hilarious that it's the same show and writer that would one day go on to write Space Babies. That's nuts. Once again, although there are many sci-fi elements to the story, the weirdness and the wackiness of the show is stripped away to tell a very raw, very human tale. If there is one word to describe this one, I think it would have to be brave, even braver than Midnight in my opinion. So far, Series 4 had been full of monsters, full of scares and good alien chases, so to suddenly put the brakes on all that and instead offer a detailed character piece just before the two-part finale is something that I don't know if many showrunners would have had the guts to do. And it is a risk. I can imagine many kids finding this one difficult. Annoyingly, I can't remember my reaction to this one as a kid, which is a shame. I think I liked it. I think I probably needed a few things explained, but I think I liked it. But in my opinion, the risk of this episode paid off, with Donna really being able to grow as a character. And that's a big thing about this episode. It really does go back to the beginning, with Donna just before she met the Doctor. All that character development that has been done has to be done all over again. But this time you don't have the luxury of 10 plus episodes to do it. You've got 45 minutes and you've got to juggle Donna and the actual plot, Wilf, her mum Sylvia, Rose's proper return. It's such a busy episode. And that's before you even get to all the hard-hitting themes of it. And yet it never feels cluttered. It flows so effortlessly that everything is allowed its time to breathe and sit. Catherine Tate is obviously stunning in this episode. Every decision she makes just either makes you laugh or it breaks your heart. And it really shut up anyone that was still saying she was just a comedy actress. And I can't stand that anyway. Just a comedy actor or whatever. I just think that's so fucking snobby. Comedy is hard. Comedy is really tough. And your timing has to be stupidly good. And you also need to have a way of phrasing things. And it's a skill. It's a real skill. I can't stand that we sometimes look down on comedy, especially when some of the greatest sitcoms have come out of this country. Like, we should celebrate comedy so much more. Also, comedic actors are usually pretty good at drama. Comedy is only one step away from tragedy, so it doesn't surprise me that Catherine Tate killed it in this role. Right, this feels like a good time to talk about the Noble family. Let's start with Sylvia. Sylvia Noble is a weird one. She is kind of meant to be unlikable. She isn't meant to be as warm as, say, Jackie Tyler was. She is quite cold, quite sharp and hard at times, and I think that's okay. I never know with Sylvia. Personally, I think she could have been toned down a bit and it would have still worked. I actually think I prefer her in the 60th. I think she's much softer and easier to watch. And that's not me saying I don't like flawed characters. Characters should be flawed, otherwise they're boring. But in Series 4, I don't know, I struggle with her a bit. Sometimes she's incredibly mean, other times she's jumping for joy with Wilf and it's light and joyous. And I don't think it's really character development. Her characterization just changes. I don't know. Honestly, let me know in the comments what you think of her, because I find her a difficult character to discuss. Sometimes I like her, other times I don't quite get what they're going for. Wilf, on the other hand, is a god amongst men. Played by the wonderful Bernard Cribbins, Wilf is a warm hug of a character, effortlessly charming and likeable with a cheeky glint in his eye. He lights up the screen, and anytime he's in an episode, it suddenly immediately gets better. I think Wilf may be one of my favourite RTD characters of all time. He's just so watchable, with a heart and a wit that shines through in every scene. Also, I love that we get this older recurring character in this big, mad sci-fi show. And unlike some shows that treat the older character as a bit of a joke, Wilf is shown so much respect by the scripts. He feels so real, so lived, and is the perfect character for a family show. So many people connected with him, from the older generation all the way to little kids, and that's just such a remarkable thing for both a writer and an actor to achieve. I think a lot of it's down to his eyes. Bernard Cribbins just had wonderful eyes for the screen. They're so emotive and expressive that they worked so well on camera. The camera loved him. And that's a weird thing people say a lot, but it is true. His personality really came through in everything he was in. And Russell and the writing team captured that personality perfectly in the character of Wilf. I don't think you could have asked for a better actor to play this character. I think it was just a brilliant bit of casting. In Turn Left, the Noble family is used brilliantly. It's definitely Sylvia's best episode. Her descent into crippling depression is just an amazing bit of telly, and although it barely takes up any of the runtime, it sticks with you long after watching. My favourite scene in the whole episode is when she talks about the woman in the shop and the possibility of her being dead. It's such a small moment, shot incredibly simply, that it just lets the performance and the dialogue shine. I adore scenes like this, little snapshots of life, moments that are so tiny and raw. Meanwhile, Wilf takes a very different approach, constantly trying to keep spirits up, that keep calm and carry on way of living from his war days. However, over time he can't keep it up, realising that there's just no saving them. What I love about this episode is the theme of death just hangs over it. It's like a ghost that haunts our characters. One by one, we are told that these people we once loved are dying, and it's building towards the ultimate sacrifice. It's just a grown-up drama. This is Russell writing years and years, way before he did. I mean, I think there's a few little nitpicks. I think it's fair to say that the Time Beetle looks a bit shit, but honestly, who cares? When a story is this strong, you can put up with a plastic-looking beetle, and if you can't, then Doctor Who probably isn't the show for you. Nowadays, we can be a bit harsher, definitely with the Disney money involved, but 2008, give them a fucking break. Now, some people would call what I'm doing right now a segue, but I like to just say that we're spinning off into a different direction. Before we can talk about the final, we need to quickly look at the Whoniverse as a whole and the two spin-off shows that were created during the RTD tenure. Torchwood and the Sarah Jane Adventures are incredibly different shows, with Torchwood aimed at a more adult demographic, while Sarah Jane was shown on the CBBC, for an even more child-friendly version of Doctor Who. And I think Sarah Jane is actually the better show. It's definitely more consistent. Sarah Jane Adventures found its tone and style pretty much from the off, while Torchwood stumbled around a bit, sometimes trying too hard to be racy and shocking for that 9 PM slot. Now, there's some great episodes of Torchwood, and I think Series 3 is a brilliant piece of television in general. I think Children of Earth is just fantastic. But Sarah Jane just felt more sure of itself, while Torchwood, definitely in its early series, always felt like it had something to prove. I will say that both shows had a great ensemble, with really strong characters that grew and developed over time. I think Gwen Cooper is one of the best characters from the Whoniverse, and it's such a shame she's barely appeared in the main show. But for me, the most impressive thing about both spin-offs is the fact they happened at all. When Doctor Who first came back in 2005, people really thought it was going to flop. And then suddenly, a few years later, the main show is attracting 13 million viewers some episodes, with 2 successful spin-offs with their own loyal fan bases. And that's not even mentioning all the merch that was everywhere. It's kind of amazing to think about it. I know people look at the show now and wonder why it's not like this anymore, and although I think the show should and could be a lot more successful than it is at the moment, thinking it could just go back to this is kind of unrealistic. And it's not even just that times have changed. Like, yeah, they have, TV is more expensive to make now, blah, blah, blah. But it's just that moment when it came back was lightning in a bottle. It was a miracle that kind of couldn't have been planned. I will say that I think people are far too lenient on viewing figures nowadays. Those 13 million people that once watched still do exist. And although, yes, viewing habits have changed with streaming and TikTok, people haven't. People still fear missing out on something, but people aren't worried about missing out on Doctor Who. And for me, that's where the problem lies. But that's a conversation for another day. Let's talk about Daleks. There is so much to talk about in this 2-part final, so I'll try to keep this as concise as possible. Firstly, I think it's amazing how well the first part brings all the characters into the action. There's so much to juggle here, so much to set up, and I think for the most part, it does a really good job. Making the Doctor off-world for the most of it, allowing the characters to exist without him, is a really smart choice. It makes them feel just as important to the story, and not like the Doctor's backup dancers, which when you bring this many people into one story, you can definitely fall into that trap. There's just some wonderful scenes in this as the tension begins to grow. That moment when they all hear exterminate over the speakers is just brilliant, allowing each character to have their own individual reaction of terror just heightens that tension even more. Russell was always good with the Daleks. He knew how to make them matter, how to make them have this presence in the story. There's just so much suspense in this episode, this constant teasing of moments that you as an audience are desperate to see, especially with Rose finally reaching the Doctor. That's kind of agony at times, the more and more that's teased. Harriet Jones returning is a lovely little detail. I adore how all the characters basically lose all hope and then very quickly they all spring into action one by one. I just think part 1 is incredibly well crafted. It's spinning a lot of plates, it's setting up a lot of things, but it's exciting and entertaining enough that it doesn't feel like setup. Davros's reintroduction to the show is really well handled too. It's pretty seamless. It doesn't feel bogged down in too much history or explanations, yet still feels very loyal to the classic character. And reactions. I want to talk about the reactions in this episode, because it gives time for our characters to genuinely react to stuff. I feel like recently, and this isn't just with Doctor Who, but a lot of media, there is this constant need to keep things moving, charging forward really fast, that we're not given time to really see and sit with our characters' reactions. And it's so important. Seeing how characters react helps an audience engage with a story. Plot isn't everything. It's important, of course, but if no one reacts to that plot, then it can very quickly become meaningless. It becomes a clip show of events rather than a story with passion and loss and love and fear and all that nonsense. And there is a genuine epicness about this one, with the Daleks invading Earth and all our favourite characters returning. As I've said already, the show was incredibly confident at this point, and this is kind of the payoff of that. This team up, this big epic, is earned because the work has been put in over the last 4 years. And before we can talk about part 2, we have to talk about the cliffhanger, that fucking cliff. People died in shock. I mean, it's the ultimate pull of the heartstrings, and it works, it just works. This reunion with Rose has been teased since Partners in Crime, so this shocking pull of the rug, it just gets you. And I know some people think the resolution to this is a bit of a cop-out, and honestly, even if you think that, I think it's worth it. We were always going to get a cliffhanger like this one day, and it just makes sense to do it in an episode with the Daleks and Davros and the Avengers teaming up. Also, with the viewing figures the show was getting at the time, it's the perfect opportunity. It's just something you'd want to do as a fan and a writer, and with the popularity Tennant did have, again, perfect time to shock and worry people. I do think this is just a great cliffhanger, and the resolution, though a bit silly, still works for me. Like, I don't think a new actor as the Doctor would work here at all. We need the payoffs with these characters. Journey's End is a little more interesting. I think the emotional stuff is all brilliant. Again, this era just got that from the beginning and it never slacked on it. A lot of the stuff can be forgiven due to the character work being so strong. But first of all, a few critiques I've seen that I don't agree with. I've seen some people say that the Osterhagen key never goes anywhere, and I don't think that's quite true. It's not used massively in the plot. I would agree a lot of time is dedicated to it and eventually doesn't really result in any kind of resolution, but it has still got a purpose. It's just a lot more cemented in character. The Osterhagen key allows us to see just how far Martha will go, and it allows for that moment when the Doctor sees what he turns people into. Without something as awful as the Osterhagen key, this moment just wouldn't land. I also love that Rose, someone who's always kind of got the Doctor, thinks Martha is brilliant, at first not noticing just how hurt and scared the Doctor is. Also, Martha saying, "Oh my god, he found you," is just a lovely little detail. I love how it shows Martha's growth and yet still a love for the Doctor, although no longer romantic. She's grown. She's grown up. For me, the story begins to get messy towards the resolution. The ending with Donna just pressing a lot of buttons has never worked for me. I understand that they give her a good reason in the script to suddenly become a super genius, they put the work in to make that bit make sense, but that doesn't stop the ending just being multiple reset buttons. There's tons of gobbledygook sci-fi language to try to cover it up, but it is just solved by pressing buttons and flicking switches. And I would say this ending is there because they wrote themselves into a corner, but they didn't. They actually gave themselves a better resolution early on, and they even go to do it and then decide against it. We are told that Davros put a little bit of himself in every Dalek. His DNA runs through them. The Daleks are all connected through him. That's how you destroy them, surely. Yes, it's a kill one of them and they all die, however the script actually gives a reason why that would work. And I still, to this day, do not understand why they didn't go with that option. I wonder if they thought it was too obvious, but if a story is naturally going in that direction, changing it just makes no sense. I think something with his DNA is much better than just flicking switches and sending the Daleks spinning. And look, it doesn't ruin the whole story for me, although I am very aware that part of that will be down to nostalgia. I think it would be really disingenuous of me to suggest that I have no nostalgia for this era. This was my era of Doctor Who. I was 8 when this series aired and I was obsessed. And not just as a fan, but as a future creative. It started a passion for acting and writing, and I can look back and see how Doctor Who influenced all my goals. And I think that's true of any era. I have a lot of issues with the Chibnall stuff, but if that was a kid's first introduction to the show, I can imagine them having a lot of nostalgia for it, and I would never take that away from them. I can't relate to it, I don't necessarily get it, but that's fine. I also try and be fair. You'll see I do try and balance praise and criticism, even for eras and episodes I love. And this is one of them. I adore the epicness of the story. I have so much nostalgia for it, but the ending is a letdown. I do have a massive soft spot for all the characters flying the TARDIS. It is joyous, and yeah, it is a bit twee, but I'll allow it. Definitely with the ending that we're heading towards, I think a lovely moment like that softens it slightly. Another issue I have with this episode is Rose's ending. Again, I don't hate it, but I do think it's a lot weaker than her original Goodbye in Doomsday, which is annoying. You always want things to grow and get better, and this does kind of undermine the emotion of her original goodbye. I am very glad they cut certain things out of this scene. If you don't know, originally they were going to have the Doctor give Rose and the Meta Crisis part of the TARDIS, so they could grow their own one and travel around in the parallel world, and that's just far too much. Rose does need to lose something, and at least she loses the chance to travel through space and time. Giving her everything she ever wanted would just be far too twee and easy. It would kind of have the same issue I have with Bi-Generation. Things need to end, and when they don't, and you know there's another Doctor just knocking about with a TARDIS travelling, it loses any sense of actual loss. Speaking of loss... Right, I'm going to ignore Donna's return in the 60th when discussing this. We'll talk about that another day. Donna's exit here is heartbreaking, and in my opinion, it is completely necessary. You can't have an epic story like this two-parter with a Doctor saving the universe without some sort of loss or tragedy attached to it. It also really works for Donna's character arc. She's a character who never believed in herself, who slowly over time came to realise just how important she was. However, once you get to that point, once she becomes the Dr. Donna, there's nowhere else to go with that character. The story is done, the journey is complete, but you can't just leave her like that, it would make no sense. So stripping that away is just the perfect ending for both her and the Doctor. This is the woman who told him he needs someone, and he agreed with her and brought her along for an adventure, and eventually that leads him to having to wipe her memory. The person he needed, the person who got him and became his best friend, can no longer remember him. He basically becomes a ghost. Also, this is another great bit of screenwriting to study. Not a single word is wasted in the action lines. They're so short, but they convey everything. This one in particular is just a great action line. He goes closer to her. She's almost scared of him. It's so simple, but it just tells you everything. This scene almost makes me forgive the button pressing ending. Almost. It doesn't, but almost. And then that's the end of Series 4. I'll talk about the Tennant specials in a minute, but first, this is it. The Doctor drops Donna home, he explains to her family what happens, Wilf breaks your heart one last time, and then the episode ends. The last line in the script is literally, all the time in the world and all alone. That's a ridiculous ending for a family show. There's no final little twist, no what, it just lets it sit. There was meant to be, 2 Cybermen were meant to jump the Doctor, but thankfully they cut it. And it's this simplicity of the ending that shows just how grown up the storytelling in this season was. Series 4 is full of fun and great characters and stories and family-friendly stuff, but it's never dumbed down. It still tells raw, emotional, gripping tales. It deals with heavy themes and good scares, and it treats its audience as intelligent. It has a lot of respect for family viewing. It's proud that it can offer something for everyone, and it does it extremely well. Series 4 is beloved for a reason. It's not overrated, it's incredibly well crafted, with some of the best stories from the shows. The specials, however, aren't as easy to praise. The next Doctor is fine. I think it's a fine Christmas special. Having to follow such a sad ending does actually harm it a little bit. I think the episode struggles with tone at times. It can't just ignore what came before, but it also doesn't want to be too heavy for Christmas Day viewing, and it leaves it a little bit confused. I think there's some nice moments, and the performances are great, but as an episode, there's not much to say about it. Planet of the Dead is an episode that exists. For me, it's the worst offender of the forced romance plot that takes up a lot of this era. I do not like the character of Christina. Nothing against the actress, I think she does her best, but I just find this character annoying. I don't believe the romance or the flirtatious banter at all, and I don't think she and the Doctor have good chemistry. It feels forced. I've said this before, but the sudden romantic, flirtatious flings at times can feel like a trope of the show, and here it's evident. It really does feel like we're doing an Easter special, we need a doctor to fancy someone and someone to fancy him. And it takes up so much of the runtime. We're on a planet of the dead. There is giant fly people and killer stingrays, and yet we focus so much on this romance that's obvious will never go anywhere from the beginning. I do like that the Doctor doesn't have a full-time companion in these specials. That's a nice addition to his arc. He's lost so many people that he refuses to do it again. I love that. I think giving him someone for each individual episode works too. We get to see lots of different dynamics, but for me, this one is weak, and it does ruin the episode for me because I can never see past all the sad attempts at flirting. There's some good things. The unit subplot is quite well handled. The effects look pretty good, but this is a weaker outing, especially after the highs of Series 4. And then, because the show's nuts, the next episode decides to be one of the greatest ever, with amazing monsters and great characters and themes running through it. It's insane. The quality difference here is insane. It's night and day. The Waters of Mars is another script that just builds and builds, turning up tension and suspense at every turn, while developing the Doctor's arc even further. I know some people think the Time Lord Victoria stuff comes out of nowhere, but I don't really agree. The 10th Doctor has always been arrogant and selfish and a show-off, and now he's grieving again and he's pissed off at the world and he decides he's had enough. I think this darkness has always been under the surface of this incarnation, and I think they play it incredibly well here. The supporting cast is amazing. I like how well established the characters are. I also love that there's secrets and stories between them that we never understand or get to know. I just adore it when stories do that. It makes it feel so much richer and lived in. The monster design is amazing. I remember being terrified and mesmerised by the Flood when I was young. These are creatures that I would happily have come back one day, only if the story would do them justice. I also think it's really funny that this episode was originally thought about for a Christmas special. That would have been nuts. It's far too dark and different for Christmas. You can't have that ending alongside your turkey. And the fact this episode delves so deeply into the 10th Doctor's flaws is quite a brave thing to do for his penultimate episode. I know people find his last story too self-indulgent, and we'll get to that, but you've got to remember this came first, and that's quite risky. To show your main character in a bad light right before the end. Like, he kind of goes off his head in this one, and he's scared of dying, and I think that's just an interesting place to take the character. I know some don't like regeneration being treated like death, but personally I do. I think that's just a good narrative. I prefer it to regeneration having no consequences, like I feel like the show does now. So, I don't know, there's a balance. But okay, here we go. I am tired. So let's do it. We're near the end of the video and the end of the first RTD era. So let's discuss End of Time Part 1 and 2. The End of Time is kind of hilarious. It's just everything that the RTD era was shoved into 2 episodes. It's got all the highs of the character work and the gripping dialogue, and all the nonsense of the coincidental plot beats and ridiculous ideas. And we'll get into what doesn't work, but there is something just endearing about its nonsense at times. It's such an odd story, and it's got everything in it. Weird skeleton master in a hoodie, the Time Lords, talking cacti, Donna, Wilf, the Ood, everyone turning into John Sim, scenes with the Doctor dealing with grief, scenes with the Doctor dealing with an old woman pinching his ass. It's insane. It's batshit. Like, there's so much ridiculous stuff in here. The Cult of Saxon, or whatever they're called, is so stupid. The fact they get the Master's DNA off Lucy's lips, like, wash your face, what's wrong with you? The whole scene is nuts. It's just overdone, even a little overacted, but it weirdly fits the tone they're going for, definitely early on in this episode. But yet, in all its epicness, in all its ideas, such as the Master and the Time Lords returning, it's the smaller, intimate scenes that really shine. Wilf is just kind of mesmerising in this. In every scene where he and the Doctor just sit and chat and discuss their lives and mortality, the whole thing just comes together suddenly. It's amazing that these are the moments that people remember when there was so much else happening around them. And it is a testament to both David Tennant and Bernard Cribbin's performances, as well as Russell's knack of dialogue. These scenes just sing, and it's some of the most powerful moments we've had in the show. The bit where Wilf begs the Doctor to take the gun is just perfectly realised. You feel for both of them in that scene, and to stop a big New Year's special and just hold on 2 actors like this is something that I don't think they do now, and I think that's a massive shame. Wilf's faith in the Doctor is really nicely explored. It's almost a blind faith. He really thinks this man is wonderful and can solve and fix anything. And then pairing that with a Doctor who is kind of lost, down in his dumps and terrified of the end, is just a wonderful contrast. And of course we get the he'll knock 4 times. That may be the best twist Russell wrote for the show. I just like how simple it is, and yet it really packs a punch. I remember this, like all these years later, I still remember the feeling of shock that gave me and how exciting it was that a drama made me feel that way as a kid. I quite like the Doctor's rant and rave before he realises he must save him, because he was always going to save him. People say this bit's cruel, but I think it's so in character for the Doctor we've been watching since he wiped on his memories. The other major thing that gets spoken about a lot is the victory lap the Doctor takes before regenerating. Some people hate this. I know they think it's incredibly self-indulgent, and yeah, it is. But I think it works for two reasons. One, they kind of earned it. It's not every day you bring your childhood show back and make it an instant success again. But also, it is still rooted in story and character. This Doctor is grieving and scared, and he's the one who needs someone, so he visits his friends for one last time, and I think that's lovely. And then you have the bittersweetness that even after visiting everyone, he still regenerates alone. His home blows up around him. He leaves, never quite coming to terms or accepting everything he faced. There's a sentimentality to it, 100%, but it's sad and bittersweet, and I prefer that to a happy, everything's fine ending for a Doctor that I don't believe ever would have been written like that. And I understand a lot of people will disagree with me on this, and I'm not saying I want every regeneration to be like this. I love Ninth's due to its subtlety, but this does work for me. It goes on, it's perhaps a tad too long, but for the most part, I feel like it's earned. And then Matt Smith turns up, but that's a story for another day. The RTD era is an interesting one to discuss, and I've actually really enjoyed making these 4 videos. There is so much to praise and yet so much to debate, but I think the one thing that must be celebrated is how well they managed to bring the show back to being beloved by the public. They went all out with some amazing stories and spin-offs and more merch than anyone should ever be able to afford, and that's super impressive. They gave us 2 wonderful Doctors, a trio of fabulous companions, and I love how monsters and aliens were at the front of this era. They were exciting and new and different. It's an era I will forever hold dear to my heart, and one day when I have kids, I will show them it and I will watch it through completely different eyes and fall in love with it all over again for a completely different reason.